I think we're in the channel now. Daniel, can you hear us? And then let's see if other people can hear us.
I can hear you.
I can also hear you, Jason.
Daniel, can you do a tweak to your overlay settings and make the icons a bit larger so people can see who's talking? I'm hearing this music again. It's bringing back memories, guys. Oh. Let's see. There should be in the overlay options. Right now, it's just using the small icons. Just have it use the large icons. Twitch is asking if Chris Avellone is here. I think he has a bit of a fan club. I guess I'll start introducing him. So, hi everybody. I'm Jason Fader, the project director on System Shock, and I might have also worked on Fallout New Vegas alongside Chris Avellone. I was the lead producer on all the DLCs, including Old World Blues, which is one of the main things we're going to be covering here, alongside Chris Avellone, our creative director on the project. Were you creative director or project director? Oh, the titles are so confusing.
Actually, Jason, I was neither one of those. I was simply just a senior narrative designer on the core game for about half of its development. So I don't want to take credit where credit is not due. And then, but I was a project director on 3 out of the 4 actual adventure-based DLCs.
Yeah, so Old World Blues is what we'll be focusing on for most of the stream, and that's the one that you were super duper influential.
Yes, I did enjoy working on that one very much. I thought it was going to be the one that was going to be reviled the most.
Oh, no. And then also joining us is Jessica Johnson. She was one of our level designers on Fallout. Jessica, why don't you tell folks a little bit about what you did on the project?
I came in kind of late on the actual project, so I didn't do a whole lot of level design on New Vegas itself, but I was very involved in the level design on the DLC, especially Old World Blues. Yep.
Also, one of these days I need to buy you a better microphone. Or you need to just sit closer to the microphone. There's just some static.
I need to learn to speak louder. Mostly.
Actually, that's Jessica's real voice you're hearing.
She acts as a giant electronic device just in her face. That's just how she speaks. She's missing the lower half of her jaw.
That would be so cool.
Wow, Jessica, people are saying you sound like Shodan. Can you just call them insects?
Cool too.
Jessica, I can't even imagine a game where you would be the principal adversary. I just have this feeling you'd just be too nice to the player all the time.
I would be. I'd be very polite.
Do you want some XP? Do you want some extra inventory items? Here you go.
Do you have enough bullets? Here, let me drop some more ammo for you.
Let me tell the monsters just to cool it down for a little while. Just take a breather, like take a bathroom break, have some coffee, but just relax.
Let's see. So, Daniel, what are you doing right now?
About to load the save for.
Before you do that, okay. let's go through just the brief opening of New Vegas, since I mean we should probably set the stage a little before jumping straight to Old World Blues. So just start with a new game, because then we can like talk a little bit about the intro, and then once we're done with the Doc Mitchell stuff, we'll jump to Old World.
Ah, good old Doc Mitchell. He's repaired so many faces in the Mojave Wasteland.
And little known fact, actually, I should. Yeah. So in game projects, occasionally you need temp VO from time to time to kind of just get stuff in the game before voice actors fully come online. and Doc Mitchell in the beginning for the longest time was my voice, and that was a very, very fun experience because I'm not an elderly doctor, but I sure sounded like one.
You were a very reassuring doctor, Jason.
I was, and my head did not twist around when people saw me. But then when they changed the VO, there was that bug. Not saying it was related.
That was pretty creepy. But now you reassured so many quality assurance testers on both sides of the fence. It was relaxing.
I know, right? I love the opening scene where you see the NCR Ranger just shooting a sniper rifle into the Raider's head. That really just sets the tone for the overall thing, I think.
Yeah, I feel bad. I think when I saw the storyboards for this, I asked Joe Sanabria if there was any way he could cut it in half, because it seemed slightly excessive, but hey. Oh, look, it's Matthew Perry.
Yes.
He's got that beautiful suit that looks like he yanked it off the seat cover of a Volkswagen Bug. Oh, it's awesome.
Set out across the ruins of the old
It's funny if we can get the Twitch lag down to real time, I would like redub over Doc Mitchell's voice with my temp VO Doc Mitchell's voice. Instead, I'll just need to bring out the various voices as we're talking to each other. Speaking of another voice thing, the town of Novak was also voiced entirely by me, including the male and female characters. Not sure if Chris remembers that build, but
wow, actually, I tried to stay out of Novak.
It was the weirdest thing because there was one interaction where I had to voice an elderly Irish man and his elderly Southern wife, and they would get into an argument with each other. And I remember Josh saw that once, and when he heard that, he just looked at me out of his office and then shook his head in shame. And that's when I knew I'd made somebody proud.
The NCR mobilized its army.
So Jason, if you could have actually left one of your voices in the game, do you know which voice you'd want to have kept?
Actually, some of them got in due to a bug, unfortunately, and I found out about this like a year later. Yeah, we thought we removed them all. I think they finally patched it out. It was with Eddie. Who was it? Akil Hooper, one of our designers, asked me for some temp VO because I was the temp VO guy on the team for a quest that he was doing with Eddie, where you would get a transmission coming in from it's been so long, from somebody that hijacked Eddie, and he just wanted two wildly different voices, and he said I could do whatever I wanted. And I'm like, okay, that's dangerous. And so one of the voices I made sound like Dracula, and another voice I made sound like Inigo Montoya from The Princess Bride. And the Inigo Montoya one actually wasn't removed, and because this was just a test thing for Eddie, and it wasn't even supposed to be in the final game, and so the script was cut. But there was a bug where some flag in the script could get tripped, and then Eddie would randomly just queue up this scripted quest scene.
Well, Jason, I have a question. When Akil asked you to do this, did he come in, look behind him, close the door, and say, "Hey, Jason, this is just gonna be a temp thing, but
crying in the rain, Pally.
Like get some voices, and I swear, yeah, I'll make sure they never show up in the main game due to a quote-unquote bug."
I'm pretty sure the intent was never ever to put in the main game. Plus, I think he was just testing a script, and it just somehow accidentally got in. And the funny thing is, when I found like a clip of this on YouTube, a friend of mine pointed it out to me. Oh no, it was my dad. My dad found it because he knows my dumb voices. And
that is so horrible to say.
It is, but he's used to it. And yeah, when I saw the YouTube video, it was true enough. It was me, sounding like Inigo Montoya, and the YouTube comments were very flattering. They said, "Wow, this guy has a great accent. I can't believe they actually got a Mexican voice actor to do this line. Like, why wasn't more of that in the game?" I'm like, "Oh my God, I feel so horrible right now."
By the way, I really wouldn't believe that Matthew Perry was actually carrying that gun beneath that seat cover suit. Like it just slid out too easily.
Well, maybe the pocket wasn't in the suit.
Oh my, Jason.
Nature's pocket. Okay, so wow, that was a lengthy intro, and loading screen.
Might take a while too.
I like any game that starts with you getting shot in the head. You know, it raises all sorts of questions about both the developers and the audience for wanting to play a game like that.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. But fortunately, there you are, Jason, to patch everyone back together.
Well, I remember when we were first thinking about how to start out the game, I think this was Josh's call. In Fallout 3, you start out being born, and we kind of wanted to start it from the opposite way, where in New Vegas, you start being dead, and then we'll work back from there.
We actually have this really bad habit, well, maybe not bad habit, of just like, oh, like our games always start from the grave or death or something really bad happened and you crawl back to life. But I think New Vegas wasn't any different.
No, it wasn't.
We just did not have really positive outlook on life until Jessica came along.
Right.
It was all me. I brought all the positives.
You're like, excuse me, can we just have someone being more good, like bring back to life, like happy world?
Oh, hey, I just saw the funding amount tick up. That's cool. I didn't think that people would throw more money at System Shock for these cool anecdotal New Vegas stories, but you never know.
Aw.
Character creation.
Wow.
We did this a lot testing the game.
My goal was always to make the ugliest character I possibly could.
You know, Dan Spitzley, one of the programmers I worked with forever, and he's also a lead programmer in so many titles I worked on. He taught me the value of telling artists that you shouldn't like put the avatars for characters set in stone because you're afraid the players might make them ugly. Let the players make ugly avatars they want to, because that's most of the fun right there.
Oh yeah, it's all about the ugly clown armor. Oh man, reading Doc Mitchell's lines again. Like I can hear it in my head, like, looking good so far. Go ahead and give the vigor tester a try. We'll learn right quick if you got back all your faculties.
You're really channeling him, Jason. You're good.
I am. Well, I studied it. I was working with, oh gosh, who was it? Andrew Deering at the time. And between Andrew and Josh, figuring out who should Doc Mitchell sound like. And we were doing all the research, and like, even though it was temp VO, I still wanted it to sound good because I like doing some VO here and there every now and then.
You take pride in your craft. And
I do, even if it's not going to be in the shipped product. Like, I know my friends are going to see it, and I don't want it to be embarrassing.
Considering our developers, chances are it will be in the shipped product.
Oh.
No, it's not Kill Hooper. He's like, you know what? I promise you it will never show up in the main game. Oh, Akil.
Yeah. Daniel, I think this is probably a good point to jump to Old World, unless we want to see more of the Rorschach test. Actually, there is a funny story with that. I'll just quickly talk about the Rorschach.
Are we allowed to talk about that story?
Are we? Well, which story were you going to tell? I was going to tell anything bad.
Okay, well then that's not the story I heard. But go ahead.
Okay. Oh, no, you meant that story. No, I wasn't going to tell that story.
Let's just move on.
Moving on. No, I was going to, the Rorschach test for how we came up with two bears high-fiving. Because I'm not sure if that made it into the final game or not, but one of the images, like, we just saw it, and on the team we thought, that looks like two bears high-fiving. Let's just do that. And we had some other wacky interpretations in there, which we later cut due to decency issues, which I think that is what Chris might be referring to.
Did we? Actually, it wasn't that. But actually, the two bears high-fiving, isn't there like a Wild Wasteland?
Yeah.
Honest Hearts, where a tribal shows up and he's got the name Two Bears High-Fiving.
Yep. We brought it back. Or the bug with Bob from accounting.
Oh, Bob. Why can't you just stay in accounting?
So yeah, Daniel, whenever you want, you can load up Old World Blues, and I'll just probably start talking about more silly stories. Speaking of,
is Daniel allowed to talk? Is Daniel allowed to talk?
He is. He just seems to be a quiet little British chap. Daniel, are you okay?
Wow.
Daniel, you can talk. Or maybe he muted himself. Daniel, we can't hear you if you're trying to talk.
You know what? Let's let it go. Maybe he just...
Okay, true.
He probably just hates people from the colonies, you know?
Yeah. Oh, here comes Old World. Yeah, Chris, you can start talking about stuff since this was more your show.
Yeah, so one thing we try to do with all the DLCs for New Vegas is try and give them all their individual different like tones and feels to them. We did like survival horror, and then like go to a great nature preserve, and then for this one, it was like, hey, let's embrace the idea of 1950s sci-fi wackiness and include a lot of cool weapons. But most of all, we want to sort of recreate that sort of midnight theater, like shock, suspense, alien horror feels. So we thought it'd be fitting if we took that drive-through theater in the Mojave Wasteland and used that as sort of the jumping point to Old World. Although the exactly how you got there from the core wasteland to the big empty is kind of a mystery. I never really decided to go into that too much. I'm like, you know what? The transportal ponder will figure everything out. Interesting fact, this is actually a lot of the same setup that was supposed to be in the Boulder Dome in Fallout Van Buren, which was the code name for Fallout 3 back at Interplay. But when we got the chance to do New Vegas and get back to Fallout, we decided, hey, you know what? We'll try and see if we can leverage some of the ideas from Van Buren and see how they might have mutated over time. So the Old World Blues intro and the whole setup of the DLC was inspired a lot by Van Buren. And a lot of crazy technology was present in this thing. I believe that Brian Menzies did the sort of slides for.
Oh yeah, he did so much.
He is a workaholic, man. That guy just keeps cranking out stuff.
My favorite was the posters that we had throughout the office were like, oh, loose lips sink ships. And they were like all retro looking, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, Brian Menzies did a lot for the listeners out there. Brian Menzies did a lot of the billboards and a lot of the sort of ambience and feel for a lot of the Fallout titles.
And isn't he the original artist of the Vault Boy?
You know, actually, in a recent conversation, I wasn't sure. I believe actually Leonard Biarski was the one who originally proposed the idea of sort of that monopoly. And I think Brian actually just had to end up doing 1,000 variations of that guy. So I'd like to think that they both made a happy family when it came to.
I do recall the incident when the baby kicking Vault Boy made its way across the internet. That was a fun one.
Yes, and also I believe there was other artists that did other variations of the Pip-Boy that probably shouldn't have been leaked either. But anyway, that's great. Yeah, but
yeah,
Brian,
let's talk about Old World Blues. Like, so tell us more about like these opening cinematics and just where these ideas came from and just how you do what you do, you beautiful man.
Oh, Jason, my heart's getting all flutter. So the first thing is the idea of having these beginning slides and end slides for the DLC. It was kind of a new thing we wanted to try. Like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if all of these were their own mini stories, their own mini reactivity? And initially it seemed like adding these slide images wouldn't be a big deal, but they, of course, in game development ended up being quite a big deal. So, for example, what I mean by that is, for example, the end slides in the DLCs, there's a chance remotely that you could die during an end slide being played in the DLC. So we had to make sure there were all sort of provisions for keeping the player intact while these slides were playing. So actually, it was sort of happening in real game time. But back to what inspired it. Basically, we just want to do like crazy 1950s sort of sci-fi late night movie. How do I put this? Like Forbidden Planet. Like we had a lot of like really short.
Oh, remember the homework assignments you assigned us for all the DLCs? We would watch movies together as a group.
I felt so ashamed that I ever.
No, those were great movies.
That was fun. It was fun.
You know what? We have to watch Treasure of the Sierra Madre, or else nothing in this DLC makes sense. You're like, oh,
and
please
Cube.
let us go home. Please let us go home.
Like for Dead Money, I mean, we did a lot of research with those very suspenseful ones. I think Cube was my favorite from them.
Cube is one of my quiet favorites. Not the best movie in the world, but I like how all the different their psychologies and their special traits sort of allow them all to sort of have the potential to escape, even if they didn't really. Wow, this is really bringing back memories.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so to tell you guys out there, I don't know if you've ever read a comic called Transmetropolitan, but in that comic book series, the main character, who's a journalist, Spider Jerusalem, he has an apartment with actual AI appliances that talk back to him, and one of them is he has a drug addicted like coffee maker. And after seeing a lot of the mods that got released for New Vegas, where it was pretty clear that we hadn't done a really great job in making a cool home base, we're like, you know what, one of the things we could add to a home base for players is we actually have different appliances that have artificial intelligences like that.
Wait, pull back. Go look at Muggy. Turn around. This is going to be a little delayed. But yeah, when you get a chance, talk to Muggy. He was my favorite.
Oh, yeah. And so I talked to one of the writers on the project, Travis Stout, who I think is at Ubisoft. He might be in Sweden. I don't know where Travis is. Anyway, I'm like, Travis, the general feel that I think would be cool for the, the home base is, can you give like each of the appliances sort of their own wacky personality and go? And Travis did an amazing job. Like he had the the Death Ray obsessed toaster over here, and then he had Muggy, who was obsessed with collecting mugs. And the gameplay purpose was just take all that junk that nobody ever uses for anything and try and find some useful purpose for it. And he did a great job with that.
Oh, something worth mentioning. It looks like our very own John Burke is in the Twitch chat.
What?
John Burke was the right. Say hi to John Burke.
Hi,
he was the
John.
lead programmer on the New Vegas DLCs and an all-around awesome dude. Daniel, if you're looking for Muggy, he's in the bedroom.
Whoa, what's he doing in there?
Oh, looking for mugs.
He was so bitter. I'm like, wow, right. Travis, do you ever want to talk? Because like we could, if you're having any issues about anything, let me know. But I feel like Muggy's channeling some stuff.
And he's adorable because he's just a mini Securitron.
You know what? If we could have actually brought him back to the core game, that would have been pretty awesome. Like, I think Muggy following you around. And,
just as a mini companion, he just gets into trouble.
Great. Yeah, I thought he was so cute. He was so
well, and his image, which Brian Menzie made, we printed that out. Wait, no, did I print it out? Somebody printed that out and put it on the Obsidian dishwasher with the caption, "You got mugs? I really want mugs." Because we always wash our mugs.
Someone took the image and actually ended up making all the coffee cups of the company too, which is also pretty nice. Yeah. This is.
You'll be able to talk to him later.
Aw, he's all shut down. I wonder if Brian Menzie got inspiration from Beauty and the Beast when it came to the chip design for. Oh my God, we're gonna talk to the think tank. Those guys.
So, Chris, talk about how you chose the voice actors for this opening scene here.
Oh, actually, you know what? I didn't. The very wise Mikey Dowling and Jason Bergman from Bethesda, they decided to sort of like expand the range of casting, and they actually tried to approach more unusual and jokey actors, and they had a lot of good suggestions, and we heard the auditions. It was fantastic. So we're like, you know what, this guy sounds like a 1950s radio announcer, this guy sounds like a disgruntled professor, like all those things ended up factoring into, and then there was Jace Hall, who actually ended up being the voice of the toaster, and we actually brought him in, I think, for his actual web series, where he's like, you know what, I want to do a show on the web series where I pretend to come in and do voice acting and do a terrible job. So of course he chose us, and so we filmed him doing that. And then after that, Jason asked him, "Hey, would you be interested in voicing the toaster for real?" And Jason's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll give it a shot." And he did a great job. So that was a kind of a nice surprise. Also, this sequence is like way too long. Like we got in the habit of trying to over-explain everything after Dead Money, and oh my God, I could go on for hours about this, but
we do have hours.
We do have hours. Okay, so in Dead Money, I won't say I got yelled at, but I will say I was sternly told that players need everything explained to them. So therefore, I have to explain everything about this DLC. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't think that's a good idea, but okay. So you may notice that they go on and on this DLC about, for example, hey, by the way, your brain is missing. Oh, in case you guys didn't know, in Old World Blues, a lot of the impetus for the DLC is the fact you got your brain stolen. So actually, you're walking around without a brain right now, but somehow you're still functioning. Don't ask questions, just roll with it.
It's the future and it's science. That's all you need to know.
It's part of the inspiration with Spock's brain. Sure, any crazy thing could happen in the Fallout DLCs. So we over-explained that. We're like, here's why you can't leave the crater. Here's the rules for the crater. By the way, don't disrupt our experiments. And I don't understand what human beings look like anymore. Like all that stuff is pretty much part of that opening scene. And I really love their eyes on the monitors. I think one of our animators, Seth, actually made different size monitors for the sort of male and female brains to sort of give them some personality. He did a really good job with that. So, Jessica, I'm so sorry you were part of this project. Like, that's
we haven't gotten to any of the level design stuff. We're still in the damn intro.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
one of the
that's
things-
horrible.
I really remember about the beginning of this project was when we first sat down for our first meeting on it, and your primary note on what we were supposed to design was, "I just want you to have fun," and we all came out of that meeting like, "What does that mean?"
That was the best from my standpoint because I had to figure out, okay, how do I task making something fun? How long does that take exactly?
How do I quantify fun?
Pretty much our notes were like wacky 50 science, you're making some sort of lab, and it needs to be fun. And we all came out of that meeting just panicked because we had no idea where to start. And I think we had 2 days to design something.
Yeah, that was, that's always a lot. That's always a lot of time. Yeah, I remember when we were talking about the layout of the exterior of the DLCs, and I was talking with one of the level designers, Sydney Wolfram, and she's like, "Well, so what are you kind of looking for here?" And then she gave me that Sydney look where you're like, "You better be quick."
That she'll cut you.
And I'm like, "Well, could you kind of make it like a big circuit board with pipes?" And she just looked at me and then walked away. And then 2 days later, the operator was covered with all this circuit board of pipes. I'm like, "Oh, this is perfect."
She was so proud of her pipes. I remember she just kept talking about it a lot. Those pipes were amazing. I did have to be on the watch a little for any phallically shaped pipes. I caught most of them, but not all of them.
Yeah, speaking of which, for the audience out there, sometimes one good principle of level design is you try and break up the visual space the player sees. They actually don't see too far in the distance, because actually that ends up being exhausting. And I call that the World of Warcraft Baron syndrome, where what you can do is oh, I see my quest destination very, very far on the horizon. I know I'm going to have to spend 3 to 5 minutes actually running in that direction to get there. But the nice thing is if you break up that space, which they did really, really well elsewhere in World of Warcraft, that ends up being a little bit easier for the player's eyes to digest and actually play through the level. So. Oh my God, they're still talking.
Yeah, it's still going. Is there a way to maybe skip any of this, Daniel?
No, I think it's impossible because the milestone didn't.
And I can really remember working with Travis on a bunch of the logs and the levels, trying to cut those down, but keep the sense of humor and keep all the information. Because he would ask me, "What's the important information I need?" And then he'd be trying to keep the sense of humor, and they would be just pages long, and couldn't have a log pages long.
The writing was so hilarious in this. I loved it.
Jessica, didn't you have the level where all the robo dogs are staring at the chalkboard, and it's being okay, got it. We had an interesting challenge with this DLC, just because we wanted to include a lot of humor, which we thought would not go over well because we're not very funny. But we also wanted to make sure we weren't doing the same type of humor that was in Fallout 2, which was kind of like fourth wall breaking and, hey, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. This character acts like Darth Vader. But for this DLC, we're like, you know what? Maybe there's a way to do that same wacky humor, but just have it explained within the DLC as to why these brains are so crazy and why these scientific experiments are so off the wall and nuts.
And as a fan in Twitch just pointed out, yes, one of the doctors was Doc Venture.
It's James Urbaniak. I can't pronounce his last name. It's got so many letters in it in a very interesting order. But yeah, he actually, as a voice actor, he was great. He before reading some of the lines, he would actually stop the session and go, "Look, okay, so what's the overall context of what I'm saying here, and what's the joke?" And I'm like, "Well, pretend like it's a Disney movie, but Professor Zero, Dr. Zero, doesn't actually get the point of the movie." He's like, "Okay, I get it." And then he would go into it, and he would do a great job. But yeah, once I heard he was actually one of the voice actors for Old World Blues, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna completely rewrite Zero and just make him a Doc venture that actually realizes he's not very good.
Measurable amount of time.
Once the brain was out, then came the coils. The Tesla coils. The coils of
Yeah, I'm just following along and reading. I mean, it's still going.
Yeah, Dr. Klein was an interesting choice just because I wanted to have at least one of the think tank brains be Imperious, so you still felt like you were being threatened. And Klein kind of filled that role. And I'm like, you know what? I had a lot of professors in college that had easily wounded pride, so Dr. Klein seemed a way to channel all that. And he's like, well, Dr. Mobius is all smart and he thinks he's so clever, but you know, he's never had to teach students.
This is a no-no. We have never been in a fight.
Oh my god, I had to over-explain so much shit.
Oh, John Break's heading out. Thanks for coming by, John. We miss you. I'm reading some questions now from the Twitch chat. Matt Bolivar asks, is Chris responsible for the sex scene with Bishop's wife and daughter in Fallout 2?
Yes, I am. I was inspired by The Graduate, and a lot of the lines in Fallout 2 are actually taken from that. Of course, that spiraled out of control. And then we were like, you know, we really should have an end slide in Fallout 2 that, you know, if you aren't wearing a condom, you actually end up like potentially creating like the next Vault Dweller after that. But designing New Reno was a lot of fun, and you know, Mrs. Bishop and the whole Bishop family was part of the fun of designing that location.
Oh, wait, I mean...
Uh-oh, the Twitch audience now realizes that I'm reading Twitch chat. This is dangerous.
Uh-oh. I will take questions. Questions are great. As long as we share questions. I want questions. I want questions for Jessica. I want questions for Daniel.
Look at me with my lumbar and thoracic
Oh my god. This guy's really right.
Spineless is what I prefer.
Oh, that's something that Chris might know. Was Elder Elijah meant to be sadistic and contemptuous of other characters and factions? That comes from the user Exhalate.
So Elijah was a Van Buren transfer from the Interplay Fallout 3 days, and he was originally supposed to be a companion. He was once the smartest person in the Brotherhood of Steel, but then he realized the philosophy of the Brotherhood of Steel was self-destructive, so he went to go live with basically the tribals out in the wasteland. And part of the goal of Van Buren was you'd go track down Elijah, figure out where he was, try and convince him to release the locking mechanisms that he put on all the Brotherhood power armor before he left, which is what cripples the Brotherhood of Steel and Van Buren. What happens is before Elijah left, was a great big, you know, screw you. He actually shuts down all their power armor, and they can't figure out how to break the encryption that allows them to use it anymore. So basically, he cripples the Brotherhood of Steel. That's part of the reason that if you want to actually help the Brotherhood of Steel out, you go track Elijah down. But in Dead Money, he kind of mutated into the Merlin, the evil Merlin of the Brotherhood of Steel, where he kind of led everybody out to the Mojave. He wasn't a very good. He was very smart, but he wasn't just a good manager. So he's one of those guys that just gets really frustrated that people won't just do what he says. So he uses all his smarts for evil, and that's why he goes searching for the Sierra Madre and all the technology there to try and build a new empire, which you promptly put a boot in the face of.
The retreat protocols and cower in my room, my dear.
Trent the Wonder asks, Joshua Graham was from Van Buren too, right?
Wow, Joshua Graham. So I don't know much about the inspiration for Joshua Graham. I do know that in Van Buren, there was a character called the Hanged Man, who drew a lot of visual inspiration from the Unknown Soldier in DC Comics. Just because I like the idea of someone being all bandaged up, and the artist was fantastic. So I'm like, you know what, we should really have a companion that does this. And then in Van Buren, the Hanged Man was just, he's a really great combat monster to have as a companion, but he's done so many bad things in the Wasteland that if you drag him along, he actually caused a lot of unpleasant reactivity in the communities you meet, usually tribal community. So in in New Vegas, I think his visual look got transferred over, and the idea that he was burned. But then they made him part of the Caesar's Legion faction, and then ran with him from there. But yeah, he did have some visual inspirations from Van Buren.
I remember when Joss was first introducing that character in a meeting, one of the reference images he used was from the movie Darkman, where Liam Neeson plays a very bandaged-looking sort of anti-hero. I love that movie, and when I saw it, I'm like, yay! Nobody really knows about that movie, but Josh does.
Yeah, but again, like the original was just the unknown soldier, and it's just because I thought the artist just made him look so cool.
Oh, this is a super duper Chris question. Prepaid Game asks, also interesting username. What was the inspiration behind Ulysses?
Well, Ulysses' inspiration was he was cut from the core game, and we're like, okay, well, we have this character, and we have this character, so what do we do with him? Or we could do nothing with him. But then, as we got to the last stages of Dead Money, it occurred to me it might be kind of cool if we, since we knew we were going to do 4 DLCs, why don't we start introducing the idea that there's this sort of adversary out there who's trying to hunt you down. So in the end slides for Dead Money, we sort of started setting the foundation for, hey, there's this guy looking for you, and he seems pretty upset with you, and he kind of carries the old world flag on his back. So eventually, there's going to be a reckoning. We thought that'd be a really cool way to sort of do foreshadowing and bring like sort of like an underlying story to all 4 of the DLCs, no matter what order you played them in. So Ulysses is kind of born out of that, and I just thought the character designs looked really cool. Brian Menzies did a really good job with them, and then the character modelers did a great job just modeling them.
My headcanon for Ulysses' main motivation was that he was really bitter because he was cut from the main game, and we were just exploring that in the DLCs.
Yeah, the voice actor Roger Cross, he did a good job, and once I heard his voice, I also rewrote Ulysses to match that, because like he had that sort of depth and baritone to him. Like, oh god, I really gotta exploit that. I do wish I'd asked him to speak a little faster though, because I think the feedback we got on Ulysses was just he's too slow.
Is the dialogue still going? Dr. Klein is still talking.
Oh my god, yes. I love this question from Solid Baked. Why does Caravan suck so hard?
Oh,
I don't know. We actually.
I was the #1 Caravan player in Obsidian when we first made that. I loved that game.
Probably the only one that understood it.
No, me and Josh knew it very well.
Well, okay, then you're 2 people.
And we even recorded a tutorial for it.
Oh my god, there's so many minigames. I was like, we could probably add 3 more and be fine.
I kind of remember loosely what Josh's reason was for Caravan. It was supposed to be a game that, since you'd find playing cards from remnants of the old world, he wanted to devise a game that made sense that people would logically play, but you can play with an incomplete deck because people would not have complete decks wandering around. And that was pretty much the gist of it. And then I forget who the key designers were behind it. I think it might have been Josh and Eric Fenstermaker, but I might be wrong. It was so long ago. But yeah, they designed it. It was really fun. I loved it because I love those types of card games. And I would just play it a lot. And you could play it solitaire. And I had a problem.
Did you have to seek counseling, Jason?
No. I found solace in voice acting, actually.
Oh.
Let's see. More questions since Dr. Klein is still talking.
I think this goes on for like 20 minutes.
It says, Jessica, you've been quiet. Jessica, talk about things.
Things happened when we did this game.
So in case we don't get to it, I remember that there were some interesting stories that you worked on, especially there was kind of like an homage to your old dog. Can you talk about how that happened and like how you set that scene?
Oh, well, we came up with the idea of having a giant cyber dog at the end for the boss fight. And my dog, Gabe, had died about a year ago. He was a Great Pyrenees. He weighed 140 pounds. So not the biggest dog out there, but definitely a big dog. And so I named the villain or the boss you fight at the end of, I think it's X8, Gabe. So Gabe is named after my dog.
Aw. And Jessica, you actually created Roxy too, right?
Yes, I created Roxy. That was probably the most fun little scripting thing I've ever done, was making that the little bean machine that you could try and splice different things together, and you could come up with Roxy if you spliced a dog and a robot together.
And I think actually Roxy had one of the actually maybe a variety of onslaught blues where like I think if Rex is still alive and Roxy is still alive, they go off and create like robot puppies.
Oh,
Yes, there was a slide for Roxy that if both were still alive, she would escape into the wasteland, and they go make robo dog puppies, whatever those would look like.
how would that even work?
I
Like,
think
just
they would just be
replicating
dogs.
yeah, right? Like
Yeah.
they wouldn't have any
It
cybernetics.
must be dogs, but
Or like if one of them was an actual natural dog and it was then they came out with a cyber dog baby. I mean, would Eddie be to blame for that? Like, could Eddie be the father?
I don't know. Eddie seems suspiciously quiet about a lot of stuff.
He
So
does.
doesn't it make you suspicious too?
It's funny because Eddie, for a character that had so few lines, had the most personality to me out of all the companions in the game. Like in a lovable R2D2 kind of way.
I think it actually was Gabe that actually ended up being one of the way to turn one of these think tank brains to your side, because he had that dog growing up who I actually think was the boss dog in your level, Jessica, and he's just like, you know what? That's the only creature I ever loved. And then like suddenly he remembers what love is. He's like, oh wow, the dog would always comfort me when all the bullies were beating me up. And you're like, okay, this is going in an interesting direction for a very scary, floating tank brain. But then he breaks down and actually has a moment of emotion, and then you can call back to that at the end game when Klein's trying to convince them to all gang up on you, and he's like, no, he made me remember how I love my dog. And you're like, well, thank God that dialogue option went somewhere.
I remember QA hated testing the intro to this.
Yep. Thank God we had that shortcut.
Right?
I really wish we could activate that now.
Wait, what? I think we could. I mean, you should have access to the console, but that might break some things.
Ooh. We could do all sorts of things with a cheat console.
I barely remember the commands. Oh,
Yeah, I'm
so
trying
long
to
ago.
remember some.
Yeah. But if we break it, then we'll need to just play through it again, and let's not do that.
I do remember for I think the character 8, who's one of these brains, we actually like, you know what? Since we really can't afford a lot of voice actors, a lot of voice lines, why don't we just have some character that speaks with sound effects and gibberish, and everyone else just translates for him? So I think that was part of the quote unquote inspiration for that character.
Oh, where I just saw a question. I forget who asked it. It just zoomed on by. But it's a good question for Chris. Who was your favorite character to write and why?
Oh, wow, that's really tough. So I usually enjoy writing each character for different reasons. What jumps to mind? I really like writing the sort of like, oh God, how do I put this? So, for example, Dr. Klein here, who talks forever, he has a moment where he reveals like how petty his jealousies are about Dr. Mobius when he's examining some of Mobius's schematics. And he's so petty about it, and not to call back to my college professors, but they were pretty petty about this stuff. They're like, oh, well, that teacher does this. And I'm like, wow, I'm totally going to channel that. But I guess it's like little slices that really dig deep into their personalities. Like I like the idea of like the one think tank doctor, like when he starts talking about his dog, suddenly the tone changes, and like moments like that in their character writing is what I really enjoy.
Putting that off too long.
I also really liked how when we were making the levels, how it kind of became this play between us and Chris of he would come up with an idea for a character, and then that would kind of play into the doctor who was in charge of that lab, and so we kind of play off each other, and it really helped build the levels to be sort of a deeper thing than just, you know, a place you ran around in.
And what would be great is sometimes I'd see the design for a level and I'm like, I totally leveraged that in that doctor. And then Jason was probably, oh God, please don't write anymore.
No. We crank these TLCs out fairly quickly too.
Let's check out this sensitive question from Magician 16. Chris, if you were to work for Bethesda Game Studios on Fallout 5, would you quit if you were forced to write meaningless quests? Well, Magician 16, here's my feeling on that. My feeling is you should never, ever write meaningless quests in the first place. They should always have some sort of validity or meaning to them. Otherwise, players get pretty upset. Which actually brings us back to Old World Blues, because actually the quest structure in Old World Blues is actually pretty much go fetch this and bring it back, which we realized. But people didn't seem to mind because it unlocked a new NPC usually when you did it. And what I mean by that is you could go out in the crater, find a certain AI program, bring it back to your home base, and then suddenly you had somebody new in your home. And I think that took a lot of the sting out of the fetch quests of go from A to B and then back to the home base.
I just read a funny comment. Someone just called you the master of speech checks, and I just remember the meme that went around the office. It was a picture of you with a speech bubble, and it just said, "Can I make a speech check? Because I'd really like to make a speech check."
It's one of the three. It's one of the three principal archetypes of Fallout. I think it should be ignored. I'm sorry if I beat the drum beat too much on that.
It was fun.
For Fallout Van Buren, part of the plan was we would take. Oh my God, you can actually go free now. Oh my Lord.
You mean there's more to this game?
No, it's just that we're done. We're done with it now. You solved it.
Okay.
Yeah, for Van Buren, we're like, we already have the combat guy, the talkie guy, but after reading this book called Lucifer's Hammer, I'm like, you know what? We should really have a science guy as an archetype, because science guys do a lot of cool shit in Lucifer's Hammer. Wow, sniper rifle.
Oh, that kill cam. Oh, how a sniper rifle just totally dismembers all of his limbs. I have no idea, but I love it.
I think Andrew Deering actually made a unique radio channel for the crater.
Oh.
Oh, and by the way, for the listeners out there, the crater's name is actually Big Mountain, but they call it the Big Empty because the brains don't always realize that the two letters M and T together make the word mountain. They assume that when you put them together, it just means empty. So they're not too bright about that stuff. Oh my God! And there's more of like Sydney's circuit board design. That's awesome. Yeah, and it actually used to be a mountain, but then the brains accidentally blew it up. Accidentally, in quotes. But they're probably just testing some theory.
Yeah, I'm just watching him play.
Yeah, I'm actually getting pretty fascinated.
Yeah.
I don't remember the game looking this good. Is he running some texture mods? I think he is. Because this, or it still holds up.
It looks much better than I remember.
Daniel, if you can talk, you totally have permission to speak. I feel bad that you're just so silent. He's just here playing.
Well, actually,
really, it's just Sid was that good. She just made it look that good.
Daniel's our silent protagonist.
I guess so. Oh, he's nodding. Oh my God.
That was great.
What else is there to talk about for this?
Well, I think this was the DLC. We're like, you know what? We should really try to create that open world feel from the core game, but somehow we need to do it with very little resources. So we're like, how can we take every single object that's ever been made in the Fallout engine, and then find some way to repurpose it and pull it, like put it all over the crater?
Well, yeah, and just exploration externally. I mean, without having to load extra world spaces, that was a tech challenge.
Yeah,
it was designed so well so that it's one huge chunk, and it worked out pretty well for it. Ooh, that's a good question from Prepaid Game. If you can make another Fallout game, where would you place it?
Oh, New Orleans.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was actually an idea from one of the designers left Obsidian for Blizzard. His name is Nathaniel Chapman. He's like, you know what? A Fallout New Orleans game would be pretty cool. And somehow that thought just never left my brain. It just seemed like a really good click. It's like basically it's like Southeast Vegas. Interesting story. So because we didn't have a lot of art resources or sort of like character modeling resources for Old World Blues, we actually had to try and figure out a whole bunch of whatever new monsters we can make from existing assets. And one thing that one of our modelers, Kevin Manning, had done is for Dead Money, he'd actually, in order to get a skeleton placed right, he actually had to add bones to it as if it was a creature. So we had this skeleton that we technically could animate if we wanted to. And we're like, well, how would we use that? So we're like, why don't we just put it in a spacesuit and call it a trauma harness that's supposed to like go out to the battlefield and retrieve wounded characters and take them back to the doctor. But in Old World Blues, the trauma harnesses could never actually detect if the subject was alive or not. So they had all these corpses and dead bodies inside the spacesuits running around. But thanks to Kevin Manning actually adding bones to a skeleton in the first DLC, that's where we got all our trauma harness adversaries in Old World Blues. Oh, look, it's more brains. brains.
Jessica, where would you place a Fallout game?
Oh, well, I'm from Texas, so I'd have to place it in Texas.
Ugh. It's so hot there. Can we have a Fallout game that's not in some place that's stupid hot?
Would you choose like Corpus Christi? Would you choose Dallas, Houston, Austin? Like what?
Well, Houston is already kind of a
Oh,
wow.
land,
Wow.
so-
This is live, Jessica. Let's not piss off the city of Houston.
No, I'm from Austin, and Austin and Houston, we kind of have a friendly spat going on. It's all cool.
It's all chill.
So my granddad's from Houston. I love it there. But yeah, I think Houston would be really cool because you have the Gulf Coast, so you do have the marshlands. It actually has topographically a lot some in common with New Orleans. Obviously not the cool old French architecture, but very few places do. And then you do have some really like ostentatious areas of town that could be really well contrasted with sort of the wasteland. That would be really interesting.
God, that would be beautiful. Someone just suggested Fallout Scotland.
Oh, wow. I can't even imagine that.
Is Fallout allowed to have green things in it?
Well, it's allowed to have bars, so that could work out.
So my preference for where I would place a Fallout game would be in a space station.
Oh, I think
Actually, Mothership Zeta was very close to that, wasn't it?
Yes, Mothership Zeta had like that whole Time Bandits feel where you're actually getting all these people. Okay, well, I'm actually kind of enjoying this. I don't know if they actually planned to have Mothership Zeta as a DLC. It just kind of, I don't know if it just happened or what. But I remember requesting the main game and just going, hey, my God, there's a flying saucer there. I'm like, oh, adventure time. Wolverines, oh yay, Red Dawn reference.
Yeah, I love this level.
You know, I think Tim Kaine and Leonard Biarski and Jason Anderson actually wanted to take the Fallout franchise into space. I think that was their next step for the franchise before they got sick of Black Isle and Obsidian, and they're like, you know what, we're just gonna head out to Troika now. So. But I was like, space? But we're not even done with Earth yet.
Now I'm just watching the game. I just love the cyber dogs.
Oh wow, someone said Fallout Alaska.
Isn't that Operation Anchorage?
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
I mean, not a whole lot of content was there for it, but I mean, I think that'd be cool to explore, just like the Snowy Wasteland.
I think it was cool.
You call it the Nuclear Winter expansion.
Oh my
God.
That was that was a low blow, Jason. That was really going right for the gut.
Somebody's asking what was the plan for the Legion areas that were cut. I don't think, Chris, you were involved with a lot of that stuff back then, right?
The Legion, like, yeah, actually, you know what? I have no idea. Also, the NCR and the Legion balance was kind of not there. Like the NCR just felt like it was getting most of the screen time.
Yeah, I mean, it was so long ago, but I mean, I know that there was additional content that, I mean, that just happens on any game project. You design way more than what you reasonably have time to do, and then you pick the best things that you want to finish implementing, and then cut the rest. And things get cut from games. I'm not sure what more there is to say about it. Fallout Toronto, that would be interesting. Fallout Seattle, ooh, that would be cool. You could really play with like some acid rain and some other cool environmental effects.
Really angry drivers who still can't drive in rain.
Yeah.
Sorry, Seattle.
Zombie programmers walking the streets.
Everything's owned by Microsoft and or Amazon. Well, you know, actually having Amazon...
There'd be so much coffee that you pick up, and it would give you buffs like crazy.
Amazon would be like this compound in the future, and so would Valve. They're like, just try to assail our stronghold. They could be a
oh, Valve would be a Brotherhood stronghold easily.
The cult of Gabe, we're like, we worship him. He will never die.
And the PC Master Race in Brotherhood of Steel Armor.
He showed us the power of the portal technology. If only we could rediscover it.
Oh, yes. Some fans have to make that happen.
Wow, Matt Bolivar says, what about adding showdown romance scene or scene with RepairBot? I am pretty sure...
With the RepairBot, that's like the spidery scorpion thing. Why would you want a love scene with that?
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure if you go to Pornhub and listen, you should be all right.
Yeah, Chris, what do you think? Like, we haven't really been talking about System Shock stuff. I mean, Chris, what are your thoughts on Shodan?
I have a lot of thoughts on Shodan. So first off, in no particular order, Richard Corbett actually linked me to an article where GLaDOS reviews System Shock and Shodan's personality.
That sounds amazing.
And it's absolutely hilarious. You can look it up online, but the way they go back and forth just made me dream of a game where the two of them are at odds, because the banter is just hilarious. Shodan kind of drove home the idea that Shodan has some great writing, but sometimes it's really just the voice actress or actor, and combined with the audio department that can really sell a character. And I think Shodan's absolute proof of that. It's her vocal presentation in the game that I think really adds a lot to her personality. And I'm sorry, I have to take a quick detour here. For anyone who plays Fallout, I don't know if you're aware of this little trick when you hack terminals, but you don't always have to look for keywords. You can just look for two things that are connected by brackets, even if it's just full of gibberish. And that will actually help the selection of choices that you have for debugging a terminal. I think John Burke actually showed that to me. He's like, hey, well, no, you don't have to choose just the words. Like, there's actually hidden segments in here that if you knock them off the list, it can actually help your hacking chances. So anyway, good pro safety tip there for Fallout. What was I talking about before?
Shodan, GLaDOS, OTP.
Yeah. So, and what I liked about Shodan too is I felt like she made the levels themselves menacing. Like, she was the level, and so when you were fighting back against that, whether destroying the cameras or, you actually felt like you were doing damage to her, but she was the environment, which I thought was pretty cool. Yeah, Shodan's pretty great.
Huh, we had somebody request Shodan be voiced by Felicia Day. Sadly, or maybe luckily, I don't know, however you want to look at it, Shodan's actually going to be voiced by Terry Brocious again. So the original voice of Shodan. We can't think of anybody else we'd rather have do it.
Well, you know, if GLaDOS and Shodan have babies, they'll probably, you could probably ask Felicia Day if she'd be a Shodan baby. Why are we so mean? They're not insects. They're people.
Yes. Why do we like cake so much?
Oh, cake. Oh, hello, Wheatley. Hello.
Oh no, whose whose idea created Fisto? That would be my old roommate.
Robert Lee. And I think actually there's both a T-shirt and a poster you can find online to the proud folks at Redbubble. Although I don't think they realize what they're selling. Yeah, I think I found it on the Fallout search. I'm like, Rob, there's a shirt out there and a poster. He's like, I'm on it.
How did we ever get that into the shipped product? I was floored when that was approved. Like, did somebody not understand it that was like approving it?
Jason, I could not even tell you. Like, I've never been part of any approval process whatsoever. So, where did you find Fisto? Was he actually in Vegas or?
I think he was actually in Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess he would have to be. Like, there could only be a Fisto in Vegas. That's why people go there. God, that was so weird. I wonder if Rob's under counseling now.
You got to the residential test. This is really boring.
Question:
Wow.
Why didn't you allow Fisto to be a companion?
That would raise our ESRB rating by a bit.
We probably should have allowed for a lot more companions that just didn't have a lot of dialogue. Because I think dialogue was actually the big limiter. Or, they've got to have a big companion quest. But
Plus, when you think about it, isn't the player really Fisto's companion?
yeah, it's kind of a weird romance, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we probably should have allowed it, like Muggy and Fisto. And you're like, you know what? Eddie, take a break. Rex, take a break. We're gonna add some new robots to the lineup.
Oh, people, they thought Rachel Messer. No, Rachel Messer is, now I'm blanking on the name.
Rebecca.
Yes, Rebecca Lansing.
Ah.
It's been a long day. Yeah, she'll be the first voice that you hear in the game, but she's not the voice of Shodan. Shodan is the wonderful Terry Brocious. Oh, the dogs.
Mhm. So yeah, they're either watching the lesson or playing poker. So these are the possibilities.
I would never play poker with those dogs.
And
Like-
one of them is cheating.
Oh,
Wait,
really?
Really?
Yeah, there is one that has a card under its paw.
Daniel, can you zoom in on that? Enhance. We'll probably see that in like 20 seconds when Twitch catches up.
Oh, and this is the perspective of the boss area, right, Jessica?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so you have these tunnels go through and sort of show you parts of the other parts of the level. So
Okay,
yeah,
let's see. Is it cheating?
Right.
Well, there's a card on the floor.
Mhm.
How was the dog cheating?
It must have spawned not close enough to its foot, but yeah, there's an ace.
Oh, okay, it's supposed to be by its paw.
Yeah.
Visual
Sneaky dog.
storytelling. Yay.
Speaking of visual storytelling, Chris, isn't that one of the things that you want to explore more in System Shock?
Yes, actually, Old World Blues is a great. You wouldn't believe this by watching the intro, but because we didn't have a large voice acting budget, and even spoken characters are kind of expensive, and even text characters are kind of expensive, we actually did a lot of visual storytelling passes for the big empty crater. We're like, hey, here's where our camp was. Here's the story behind that camp. Here's how the props should be laid out to tell that story. And it was a really much more gratifying way, I think, to tell a story, because the players kind of put together what happened there. And they don't have to see everything or understand everything. They just have to sort of grok the general idea of an area. And I generally find that words.
Chris, can you define what grok means for some of the audience that might not know that word?
Sorry, grok is in you instinctively understand it.
And what's the origin of that word?
From the man who goes by the name of Grok.
Oh, okay.
Stranger in a strange land.
That's what I was waiting for. Oh, Daniel's in trouble. No, he's fine now.
He's always fine. He's
He
British.
just drank some Nuka-Cola, he'll be good to go. Nobody probably has teeth in the wasteland if they're all drinking soda constantly.
Yeah, I can only imagine the amount. There's a lot of things you forget about once you realize you have your lack of toothpaste and toothbrushes, and a lot of stuff goes back to the primate days.
So that's an interesting question because I'm not sure how to answer it. The magician asks, what are your thoughts on the modding community for Fallout New Vegas?
Oh,
And-
I love it. Wow, the modding community, I love them. I love pretty much all the modding communities. All the way back since Nice Old Republic 2. I'm like, you know what? Those guys do a lot of work. They show us where we sort of may have dropped the ball or not have created enough content to be satisfying. And it also taught me the value of making sure tools are exposed to the community. They may not be the cleanest tools in the world, but if there's anything you can do to sort of like make sure that players can modify the game, it's definitely worthwhile to see what the player perspectives are out there. And generally I'm fine with any developer or creator running with like any license or franchise and just seeing what their perspective is. Like with the web series Nuka Break, like I liked watching that. I liked seeing the direction they went with that. Fallout, I'm like, good for you. Like that's a pretty cool way to do things, and I'm always all for it. And like with Nice Old Republic 2, I'm like, oh, thank God you guys were out there. Like not only did you like put the content we had to cut back in, but then you did like an even better job. And I'm like, thank you so much for being out there. So anyway, I love the mod community. I think it's also a great way that if you're looking to break into games, doing mods is a great way to get attention from the developers of the tool set. Like for anyone who ever wants to work on Bethesda games, I'm like, look, just grab their tools, start creating quests, make cool mods, and the chances are they'll know who you are before you even apply, and then that's great. They may even seek you out.
And another thing for the modding community, I remember when we were working on Dead Money, and we were doing our research and watching movies and stuff, I was also checking out a lot of mods, and I was blown away by a Fallout 3 mod that was based on the movie Cube. And it starts off in a cube as you'd expect, but then it expands to so much more content, and it just blew my mind how much content could be just done by hobbyists or just passionate few. And I think that's really inspirational about the modding community is you find the most passionate fans out there that just want to keep contributing to a subject matter that they just love, and I think that's inspirational.
Yeah, and that's also a great, like, I don't always advocate that people like go work at a large studio. Like, just go work on a game. There's really nothing stopping you from doing that actually right now. But one of the nice things is if you see someone that's spent a lot of energy on a mod and they just did it in their spare time because they wanted to do it and they loved the game, like that's the person you want like on your team. You're like, you know what? This is going to be a labor of love for you because you would just do it in your spare time. Why don't we hit this happy medium where I now give you money for it? And you bring that passion to the game we're working on, and we're all good to go.
This is a strange question, but I don't know. Let's attack it. From SL128, if you could direct a Star Trek game, when would it be set?
Oh my God!
Right.
Well, I feel bad because I stopped watching. The last series I saw was so I was like, wow, okay, I think I need a Star Trek break for a while.
Okay, I'll take that question then.
All right.
So I know the show got a lot of flack, but I think the timeline of Enterprise is great with discovery and exploration, and especially technology is still new and experimental. There's just a lot of wiggle room to play with as a writer and a creative person. You can throw new alien races in the game and introduce the Klingon War for the first time. Sure, people might not like Enterprise itself, but the time period was just rich with discovery. It almost reminds me of back in the olden times, like in the mid 14 to 1500s, just when everything was new and people were discovering the new world and sailing across the ocean. And I think that's interesting. I think that's something that Voyager also tried to capture. but Voyager already had established technology. It was more about the Borg, whereas Enterprise itself, phasers were kind of a new crazy thing. What's this warp drive you speak of? How does that work? This alien race has a holodeck? This is cool. I want this in a headset. And
I liked how in Enterprise some of the characters were the transporter. They're like, "What's this really going to do to me if I hop on there?" And that was such an interesting concept from such like a, because you're like, oh well, no, like no one in the old series would ever distrust the transporter, even though technically it's the cause of many of the problems that occur on that show. But to see that on Enterprise is really great. And also, Enterprise had that really weird but interesting third season where like suddenly there was an over storyline, and I was blown away because like I was hating. I'm sorry, not hating, actively disliking the first two seasons. I don't like Scott Bakula. I'm like, I think.
Oh, Quantum Leap! Come on,
yeah, exactly. And then I got to season 3, and I'm like, oh, they're trying to tell a story now, but now it's going to go across the entire season, and I thought that was great. But then they abandoned it the next season. I'm like, oh man, you guys could have kept Babyloning 5. This would be great.
Oh, Babylon 5. Chris, you're using my trigger words.
Babylon 5, I still cite to designers to this day. I'm like, here's how you design factions and cultures and make sure there's conflict and it's interesting. And Michael Straczynski, blah, 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 whatever he does, pay attention to it.
I remember Babylon 5, just the interactions between Jakar and Londo. Like, two alien races that are mortally at war, and these guys are trying to get along, and just their dynamics. And by the end of it, this isn't I'll avoid spoilers, but it's the interactions are entertaining and enjoyable.
Yeah, and actually they get super grim. Like Londo, I still point to as, it's all in the execution of the character, regardless of how he looks to you at first glance. Like, it's what you do with that character that makes them interesting. And Londo's a perfect example. Like, I think he became one of the most compelling characters in Babylon 5 just through all the struggles he was going through.
Oh, yeah.
And really put that whole war into perspective. And I'm like, wow, good job, writers.
I want them to make more Babylon 5 somehow. They need to find a way. Making a Babylon 5 game might be interesting. Or maybe it wouldn't be, because it really is just about characters and dialogue.
That would be a lot of talking. Until we can actually figure out how to make good conversation trees.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's any wisdom that we should impart working on.
Oh, that's a good question. Chris and crew, what are your biggest reading influences and on your reading list right now?
I will let Jessica take that one.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, I didn't mean to suddenly ambush you.
Hot potato.
Actually, before I became a game developer, when I was back in college, I wanted to be a Shakespearean scholar, and I have read a whole lot of Shakespeare, and analyzed it to death, and realized when I was graduating that I did not want to go to grad school. So, well, I did go to grad school, but I didn't want to go to grad school for English. So, I am a big Shakespeare fan.
I have a really quick answer to this question. Oh, are you done? Or I didn't know if you
I'm
were
trying
done.
to think of something more modern.
Okay, well, you're thinking of that. I'll just give my quick answer. I don't really read much. Words are long, books are long. I like visual forms of media entertainment, so TV shows, movies, comic books. I love pictures. Words are just a bit much for me. I'm a horrible person.
Well,
audiobooks, yeah.
Especially if you have those long drives ahead of you too.
Oh yeah.
Well, Jessica, actually, since you're a Shakespearean, since you have the Shakespeare background, I was always kind of worried that when we went to all the English classes, that we still weren't actually getting the Shakespeare theater experience. Because there was this one moment in college where when I was, going through King Lear, as they will. And he brought up the point that there's a moment in King Lear where he basically is left on stage while he's blind, and until his I believe it's his only daughter that cares about him comes back. And when he was describing that scene to the class, he's like, well, just so you guys know, you could be reading through King Lear right now, but at this moment in the play, on the stage, what you'd be seeing is there'd be this moment of silence where you actually see King Lear on the stage, with his eyes put out, and silence. And I'm like, wow, like I would never get that from a straight read, but that's such a powerful image that I almost worry that if I don't see it in the theater, I'm actually doing Shakespeare an injustice.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons why I love Shakespeare, is because I did do a lot of theater stuff and was really interested in light and setting design. So I'm having an echo. So I really liked reading the plays and
Chris
thinking
is
about
echoing.
how you would. Am I still echoing?
I think Chris might have gotten up.
No, I'm here.
Oh,
Okay.
we were hearing echo on your side.
Oh, really? Sorry. Maybe I'll
Seems to
mute.
be fixed now.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, okay. It's better. But part of what I really liked about Shakespeare was trying to envision what those scenes would actually look like when they were performed on the stage. And I actually had a really great professor who, usually at least one play a semester, we would read it out loud and talk about how it changed when you thought about actors actually acting it. So that was kind of my Shakespeare experience, I guess.
Oh, somebody had a specific question for the level designer. Twitch for future reference, that level designer's name is Jessica Johnson. Actually, Jessica Bannon, but Jessica Johnson is what you're credited as. She got
Yes.
married after that.
No.
The question is, how did you make the world space speak in Old World Blues?
Well, I would say it's kind of it's a very deep question. Whenever I design a level, the first thing I do is just build out the geometry of it, and I want it to be something that feels good to walk around in, even with nothing else in it. And I want there to be interesting things that you can look at, even if there's no gameplay, no enemies. And so that's really the starting point for me. So I guess we spent a lot of time on visual storytelling in this particular DLC, and we also had a really great setup where we would pair level designers with an environmental artist, and it was a very team-oriented thing. So they would give input on the design and what they wanted to get to decorate, I guess, in the level, and then they would go through and make suggestions and do multiple passes, just art passes, on trying to really make every area feel like something had happened there.
And sometimes the project directors would come in, be like, can you add more blue to this level since it's supposed to be the Old World Blues DLC, and I'd kind of like some more blues. And you're just like, oh my god, are you serious? That's why we have a lot of blue force fields.
Oh, the force fields were so fun, and that was like a fun little like scripting challenge for our level designers too.
It was, because the enemies could pass through them. That was so frustrating.
Oh my god, that sucks. That must have made players so happy. Well, thank God there's a force field between me and the duck. Oh my god, it's here.
We got so many bugs on enemies getting through those force fields, and trying to figure out how to make it not happen was so frustrating.
But with respect to the mod community, one thing that we did try and do is whenever we did iterations on a prop or sometimes on a creature, like for the DLC Lonesome Road, we actually had more than one version of the Tunneler, for example, but even though it wasn't in the game. But we actually made a conscious choice to leave those in the DLC content in case modders wanted to make use of stuff, because we'd seen such an outpouring of material from the mod community. We're like, hey, well, rather than throw this character model away, why don't we just let the modders have fun with it? So that was part of the reason you might see some extra content in the DLC dumps.
Yeah, and even if you're not comfortable like putting your mods up online or being part of a community or whatever, if you are interested in level design, that's really the way to figure out if it's really what you want to do, is just go find someone whose tools are available and just start playing with them.
Yep. Why were there no Wanamingos? Oh, was it Saltabar 4? Well, Saltabar 4, let me tell you about Wanamingo. So for the audience out there, Wanamingos were a creature in Fallout 2 that we chose out of desperation because the model was largely done and or it was easy to do. But basically they looked like aliens, like the movie Aliens, but they had tentacles that they could attack you with. They were one of the many offenses that Fallout 2 committed to the Fallout universe. Recognizing how crappy the origin of the model was and how they weren't necessarily integrated with the world in a terribly interesting way, my hope is that we never ever see Wanamingos again. Geckos are fine. Actually, our first version of geckos in New Vegas, they kind of look like Muppets.
Oh my God, do you remember Gojira?
Yeah, well, yes.
Like, when we discovered you could steal the models.
Oh, and it breathes fire. Oh my God.
We did some silly things.
Yeah, that's part of the fun.
Oh, that reminds me. Chris, can you talk about the giant robotic scorpion that's in Old World Blues and what the inspiration was for that?
So the original, wow, this is going to be great. The original concept for Old World Blues, we wanted to pay homage to everything that had influenced the Fallout franchise, including Wasteland. So one of the big principles of Wasteland was you got to fight this giant armored robot scorpion in the middle of Las Vegas. And to pay homage to that, we're like, you know what? Maybe Dr. Mobius Blues, his favorite type of minion is to create these robot scorpions because he's crazy. But he happens to have a huge giant scorpion guarding his forbidden zone in Old World Blues. So that was the reason that we had that in the game. We actually wanted to include a lot of more lore touchstones, but I think we were wisely told that, you know what, maybe you should just kind of rein it in. Like, I think there were ideas for things like, hey, maybe you could put on parts of a power armor, so you actually like a power arm or power legs or whatever,
or a power glove.
Yes, or the power fist was already
so
there.
Bad.
Well, Fisto was probably using that. So.
Oh no.
Oh, Muggy, yay.
No, we still can't talk to him. Come on, get Muggy working, Daniel. We need him. Oh, now the pressure's on.
The voice acting sessions for this were so much fun.
Oh yeah. Actually, I'll never forget. I'm not sure if I should tell the story.
Do it.
Okay. So I remember one. I only heard the story secondhand, but this was for Felicia Day's character in New Vegas. I can't remember who it was that was voice director. It might have been Eric Fenstermaker. But she came into the recording booth, and again, this is the secondhand story, but they told it very graphically, so I felt like I was there. And then they played it for me, her voice clip, so it's building up. And typically, when you're a companion in a video game, you need to record exertion sounds, attack sounds, death sounds, and in Fallout's case, your companions could catch on fire. And so Felicia had to record, basically the direction she was given is, make it sound like you're on fire. And she went with it. And so she was just screaming her lungs out, sounded like she was in pain, and just going for, I think they said like a solid minute to a minute and a half, to the point where people in the recording booth that were listening to it were just feeling like, oh my God, is she okay? This sounds authentic. Like, is this coming from a dark place? And she's still going. Should we tell her to stop? I'm like, I don't know. This is good material. Maybe she doesn't. She's like, there's like a sequence to this. And so they kind of left it alone. They had like a minute and a half of her just writhing in flaming agony. And like, she looks up at the end of it, like with like just totally straight face. And she says, was that okay?
It couldn't have been better if we'd put you on fire. Way to go, Felicia. Well, thank you. And for the audience out there, the way we try and structure, well, the way anyone tries to structure voice recording sessions for games is they try and leave things like I'm on fire or screaming in pain for the end of any studio recording session, because it usually takes such a toll.
Oh yeah.
The voice actor's voice. They try and just make sure they have that at the end. And voice actors love it so much. Like you can tell by their radiant expressions once, oh, now it's time for exertions. And like you can actually see them actually like fall apart in the studio. They're like, oh my God, please no. So, oh wow, Umbersona was there talk of revisiting other Van Denver's Dog City, for example. It's mentioned in New Vegas, but I don't think there was ever any serious talk about actually including like the Van Buren Denver in New Vegas. But they did hint about it and made it relatively clear that the Cedars Legion had conquered that area of the game and then absorbed like all the learning the Hangdog tribe in Denver had for training their warhounds for the Legion. So sadness.
We're getting personal questions now. Chris, they want to know what your hobbies are. Any sports and such, except Pokemon.
Oh, sports. I'm a game designer, my friend. Sports are ridiculous. My sport is playing Life is Strange. Like that's the amount of exertion that I go through. I actually don't really have any hobbies because my hobby is what I do for a living, which is the best way to live. So I encourage you guys that if you
haven't you been into comic books though?
I have actually stopped for a large part. I'm like, you know what? Now I'm just write all day. Like, why didn't I just do this before? But actually, it's been a long time since comics, and I do some reading, but not a whole lot. Mostly, it's like, what's an interesting collection of ideas, and how can I like just spitball off of that, and I just run with it. And then 3 hours later, I emerge from my writing trance, and I'm like, what just happened? And then I read a bunch of words and go, oh, I can probably. And then that's my life.
What were some of your favorite comic series?
I like Rat Queens. I think the dialogue in it is really catchy, and they actually made a halfling be an interesting character.
Do we know somebody that does voice work for Rat Queens? I think Marisha Ray.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think she does.
But no, I was really enjoying the whole layout of the series, like the art. Like that. Any other comic book series that are interesting? It's interesting to see a lot of the old comic book series coming to the screen, like the new Preacher. I was kind of surprised Preacher finally hit, but I like the direction they're going with that. I'm
still waiting for Spawn to come back.
We'll see. Jason, what are your hobbies? Jessica, what are your hobbies?
Let's go to Jessica. I talk too much.
Besides playing games, let's see. I like hiking. Yeah, awkward silence. I'm really good at those. That is something I have mastered in life, is the awkward silence. I like hiking. I like history stuff, so I like going on vacations and seeing cool places I haven't seen before. Does that count as a hobby?
Travel is a hobby.
Yeah, it's really about seeing really cool stuff I've never seen before. I like that whether it's in a game or in real life. So I read a lot, watch a lot of movies. Jason, you've got to have some hobbies.
Me? Not really. I work a lot. I'm behind on TV shows. I think I'm 4 episodes into Stranger Things, and it is incredible. I love it.
I've only watched 1 so far, so don't
so
spoil
good.
anything.
No spoilers. What else? I mean, I used to sing. I was in a barbershop quartet for a while.
That is awesome.
Yeah, now I only sing whenever I play Rock Band. I know some origami. That's fun, I guess. But no, just gaming really. And even now, I think I end up working more than actually having time to play games. But I get obsessed and hooked into just sandbox builder games. I was addicted to Ark Survival Evolved for the longest time.
Oh, nice.
And then Factorio was incredible. And then got into a weird game called Fortress Craft, which is like Minecraft meets Factorio. No singing. I'm far too embarrassed now. Maybe later, kids, after I get a few more drinks in me.
Asking you to sing. Oh.
I wouldn't know what to sing. No. The person that you'd really want to hear singing is Stephanie Dowling, because we actually used her voice in Dead Money.
Yeah, we Mikey Dowling, one of our, and then Justin Bell set up the main theme song for Dead Money, and then Stephanie sang it. Yeah, that was great.
What game series would you most like to work on if you could? Let's go to Jessica.
I would actually really like to work on something that's not part of a game series sometime. They're always series now. So yeah, I would really like to work on
Well,
like
just any
totally
property,
original
like
IP.
just anything wildly outlandish. What would be your dream game to work on? And the awkward silence.
Wait,
Are you asking me like?
Yeah.
So non.
It could be anything, just anything, or a few things.
Well, just totally out there. I think it'd be really cool if not me, but somebody, or I'd work on it if somebody wanted to make it. Someone actually did like a survival fantasy game, because really great fantasy novels, they're always about surviving, not fighting everything. But in fantasy games, we always really focus on you being this like amazing superhero, and really awesome fantasy novels are usually just the opposite. So I think that would be something I'd like to work on sometime.
So it wouldn't necessarily have to be survival. Fantasy world, is that the gist?
Yeah, kind of like almost like a survival horror, but set in a more of a traditional, not a traditional fantasy world of some sort. So that'd be fun.
I'm boring. Like I'm not thinking of original stuff. Like the first things that came to my mind were just, I'd love to work on a Monkey Island game or an XCOM game. Oh, Command and Conquer, definitely. I love Command and Conquer. Maybe a Tribes game, like the Star Siege Tribes was really cool. And then and I really love this game series, Mech Warrior and BattleTech. Those are really fun. I just love so many games, and I mean System Shock as well. Holy crap, Fallout! I got to work on that. Like my career in the industry has pretty much just been a fanboy's dream, where I'm working on games that I played when I was younger, and now I'm contributing in bringing them forward in the industry and evolving them and building on them. It's a dream come true. It's pretty cool. I love it.
Yeah, I think that's what's really amazing about the System Shock project, since that's why we're here, is we're taking something that so many people loved and bringing it to a new audience. And I think that's really exciting.
Chris, what about you?
Well, to be honest, like I feel
he cut off. There he is.
Where we got the chance to actually work on a lot of the franchise that we really love. And I don't know. I usually the way it works now is if there's a franchise I like, I just drop them a line, or surprisingly enough, there'll already be messages from them in my inbox. And then I'm just like, well, now I'm free to pursue all that stuff. So, and System Shock is definitely one of them. I remember playing System Shock 2 for the first time, mostly because my roommate was playing it. And I'm like, what the hell is this game? And I'm like, well, it's like a first-person shooter, but wow, you're doing a lot of. And then I started playing it, and I still regard System Shock 2 document for a lot of smart choice to make with a game. Like, one thing I like to point to is the way they did cutscenes in System Shock 2, where you could see the ghostly after images of what happened in an area, was great because they were ghosts. You couldn't really mess up the cutscene, which is always a fear of every developer. When a cutscene happens with characters, you're like, well, how could the player mess this up? But then System Shock 2 dodged that entire issue by having them be ghosts, and I thought that was brilliant. That was like just one of the many brilliant things they did in that game. But yeah, I loved it.
Well, we're getting more character questions. Let's see. What are your favorite underrated games?
Oh wow. FTL.
Oh, yeah.
Is that really underrated? It's not really underrated, but I remember like just trying it out, and then like 80 hours later, I don't think I can stop playing this. I don't know. What do you got?
I think Fortress Craft captured me for quite a bit, and I think that's kind of underrated. And that's a good gem. If you like sandbox builder games and logic puzzles, that thing's full of them. And then what else?
There is this game coming out. I don't know if it's hit release yet, but it's called the Westport Independent, and it's a newspaper game. So strangely enough, but bear with me, where the goal of the game is actually to sort of edit text and remove text from articles to potentially influence factions in the city. And it's the first game that I've ever seen about censorship as a game mechanic. And I don't know how if it's, but I thought the mechanic was brilliant, especially after doing so many RPGs. They're like, okay, words. But then the Westport Independent is like, but this game's about subtracting words from articles to make certain points. And I thought that was kind of a brilliant game mechanic. And I'm looking forward to see how well it does. If it's
Jessica, any underrated games that you particularly enjoyed?
I'm trying to think what counts as an underrated game. Because there's certainly games like, I'm a huge Ico fan, but it's not really underrated. Everyone loves it. It just didn't do well when it came out. And so I'm trying to think of games that, I don't know.
Oh, we have a question in Twitch from our very own Stephen Kick. He has a question. Has Chris played Sunless Sea?
No, it's currently sitting on my desktop right now. It's because I got distracted by this war of mine.
Oh, that's so depressing, but good.
Yeah, what really brought me in was this War of Mine's art style. I really like the sort of pencil sketchy feel of the environment, and the fact that it's kind of like a strategic platformer. Like I'm really enjoying it. So I guess I got kind of distracted with that.
You know that was done by some people that worked on The Witcher?
What?
Yeah.
I don't know if enjoying it is the right word for that game.
You experience it. You go through
really enjoying it. It's great fun.
Well, it's like Darkest Dungeon, right? I don't know if I'm really enjoying playing it, but I'm kind of like drawn in. So
yeah.
Let's see. Exalate said, "What did you write in FTL, Chris Avellone?" Well, Chris Avellone says that. So in FTL, I worked on the Advanced Edition, which introduced the new alien race. I actually did a lot of common encounters and then a few special encounters, but the true writer on both the expansion and the core game was a British author, Tom Joubert, and he deserves a lion's share of the credit. It was most. I got contacted by the FTL guys, and they're like, "Hey, we heard you might really like our game. Would you want to write for it for free, like you said, drunkenly?" I'm like, "Yes, I still feel that way sober." And so I just took a few weekends, and that was a lot of. It's like at the time, like I was just doing so many dialogue trees, but FTL sort of allowed for a different form of writing expression. So being able to sort of shake up the gears a little bit was welcome.
I feel so bad. We've gone so far off the rails. And poor Daniel here is just playing through.
Playing away. There's some pipes, some beautiful pipes.
Look at those pipes. Let's talk about those pipes and how pipe-like they are.
Surprised Rob Lee didn't go crazy with all the loot requests we have. We're like, well, if you can one pipe like all the way up to this height, then there has to be a reward. But there were so many areas like that, that just may eventually have driven me.
Yeah, I think we all just ended up dividing up those bugs because they would get in our bug trackers of, oh, there's a place that doesn't have any loot, somebody go put that in. It was a big team effort.
I just love all the Easter eggs that we hid in the game, like all the Wild Wasteland stuff. That was my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Old World Blues, that was more kind of our Wild Wasteland DLC.
Yes, that's very true. And also, speaking of visual storytelling, so Daniel just went by that door with the sort of red spray painted Old World flag, and what we were hoping for is with visual storytelling, we could start communicating with the different colors those flags meant, because the flag symbol is actually associated with the road, and when you arrive in Old World Blues, he's actually walked through the crater and explored a chunk of it. But what he'll do is he spray paints the red flag symbol for a dangerous area. I believe the white symbol is for it's safe here, or you shouldn't be attacked here, like, or it's safe passage. And then he also has a blue flag that indicates, oh, I've stashed a resupply cache here. And we sort of made that part of the visual storytelling for the DLC too.
I remember there was a great deal of research that I think you and Josh did for, I guess, the hobo language that is left in like graffiti things and stuff, and like there was a lot of thought and care that was put into that system.
Actually, if it happened in Fallout, part of it, I do know that when we were doing Wasteland 2, that hobo language came out quite a bit, especially for the railroad nomads. If there was a Fallout conversation, I wasn't as familiar with it.
Oh, Jessica's getting some specific level design questions. Dark Blue Monkey asks, by the way, excellent name, Dark Blue Monkey. Jessica, is there a game out there which really impressed you for level design, and why?
Trying to think of some recent ones. I know they exist. I've just played so many games. The game that really inspired me to get into level design was Ico, so that's why I brought it up. It's obviously a little boxy now, but still really interesting to go and look at. And I'm trying to think of some more recent ones. I was a huge Zelda player, younger. I really like level design that uses kind of that lock and key system of there are areas that you see that you know you can get to, but you just have to have unlocked the right mechanics to get there. I thought some of the like smaller, like kind of hidden areas in Skyrim were actually really good. Like there were some smaller levels where it was like you had to swim down under this to find a secret place and stuff like that I really appreciated, because you didn't see that as much in some of the earlier Elder Scrolls games. And
Daniel, it looks like the Kickstarter view in the stream, the window has scrolled down. If you can fix that when you get a chance.
God. I don't think we're going to get it saved. I think it's going to keep plunging down.
Oh no.
Our Kickstarter effort is drowning, Jason. What are we going to do?
Guess we'll need to keep talking. We're getting more questions. Okay. More questions for Jessica. Jessica, how universal do you find the kits you have to work with? Wow, this is scrolling fast. I'm trying to read this. Do your skills transfer over wholly, or is there a transition period? And if so, how long does that usually take? I think that means like from engine to engine and toolkits to toolkit.
There is a transition period. It can be usually, I would say, after a week or two. I'm pretty comfortable, but there are always new things you're discovering the longer you work with a set of tools. But your basic design skills are really about learning about how things are laid out and where to put enemies and all that kind of stuff, and all of that translates over. So it's as long as you go in and start building levels and start feeling out what feels right and what feels good and what makes sense in terms of where to place loot and where to place enemies, then that will all translate over into whatever tools you're using. And that's kind of, I think, the key to being a level designer.
By the way, for those of you on Twitch asking Bethesda specific questions, I'm intentionally avoiding those so that we don't tread into dangerous territory.
And to sort of piggyback off of one nice thing is even if you're learning a new tool set or a new kit, one nice aspect of it, which can obviously is a huge boon to your game development career, is sometimes there are just certain editors that do one thing fantastically that you wish all the other editors would do. So whenever you have a chance to get involved in toolset discussions or request like functionality you want for an editor, the more range of experiences you have with game editors, that can end up being a huge plus. You're like, hey, well, you know what? I really liked, the variable, tracking system that the GEC had, because it helped like avoid a lot of bugs, even though like it required a little bit of upfront effort. In the end, it ended up saving a lot of time. Or if it's a certain like world terrain mapping program you like all of those things you can end up like incorporating into future tool sets, but you just have to have exposure to them first and realize, hey, this company did this selection of things in their tool set really well. It's worth carrying that over into our future designs. Oh my God, this is a Sydney Wolfram special. Higgs Village. This is the most prominent moment of visual storytelling, I think, in the whole DLC, because this is actually where all the think tank brains used to live. And so based on what you know of them already, and figure out which of them used to live there. And and each of them have like little tidbits about their person, like, well, not little tidbits, like some of them kind of go over. Dala's house has all the teddy bears in it, and and then Zero's house has all his trophy cases of hatred, and this is a lot of fun to do visual storytelling for. I remember passing this off to it was Sydney and
probably Dini.
Yes, but there was one environment artist, John Lewis, who also took part of it, and he's like, okay, yeah, I can do this, and all of them just jumped in there and just started. They did a fantastic job. God, wow.
I'm kind of impressed in the Twitch chat. We're getting a mix of questions that are both about Fallout and just general game development for the various trades that we're in. We're getting level design questions for Jessica, writing questions for Chris, and I mean we're covering the whole design gamut. If anybody has system design questions, I can field those too. But I feel like people want to know more about Fallout right now, because that's where we're playing through, and plus that helps Daniel feel like he's more included.
Jason, are you there?
Yes. I'm just reading questions now. I can't talk and read at the same time. Can anybody actually? Oh, okay. That's a good question for Chris. From Cheese Grater Suicide. When are you going to make your own Kickstarter for a game called Chris Avellone Does Whatever the Blank He Wants?
You know what? It's something to consider. I'll have to give that some more thought. To be honest, I'm just so busy right now, but in a good way, that I
think you're actually living Chris Avellone Does Whatever the Blank He Wants.
Well, that's not true, but that's also good, because I think doing whatever I want may not end well.
We have a question for Daniel. Pokey1 asks, Daniel, do you enjoy playing? You can just nod if you do. And we'll get that response in about 20 seconds.
He's not enjoying it.
No? Okay. It's good.
Yeah, this is Dr. Klein's house. Yeah, I want him to have a little bar downstairs.
He shook his head yes.
Oh.
He just nodded. Oh
my God. Yeah, the Higgs Village was a lot of fun to design. Umbersona asks, I heard Area 51 too. Not to my knowledge. We did have, obviously the alien special encounter in Fallout 1 set the stage for aliens being in Fallout, which we could argue as to whether that's a good thing or not. But there wasn't, I don't recall the Area 51 location from Fallout 2. I know we had the EPA that was cut, and then one other area that's I'm spacing on right now. But Area 51, I don't recall being sort of if it was there, it certainly didn't last too long. And the level design in Fallout 2 was chaotic. It was we basically just like diced up the wasteland and then sort of did an emergency triage to go, okay, well, you get these 3 areas, you get these 2 areas, now go. The amount of oversight of Fallout and like production design wise just kind of wasn't there. Oh, and Longwood Geek says, did you guys name Higgs Village after the Higgs boson? Yes. And because I'm a dummy, I didn't know that until Sydney told me. And Sydney is actually a physics buff, so that's why she chose the name. And
I think she named it after the thing that the Higgs boson was named after, not after the Higgs boson itself.
Levels of transition. Oh my God.
Oh, my cat just jumped up. Sorry, I'm cat distracted now. And she ran away. Never mind.
Your cat is adorable, Jason.
She is. I need to post more pictures of her. I'm horrible at posting pictures and doing things online. I'm just so self-conscious.
Let's see. GTG 3000. What was Zeta? So me and Jason chatted a bit about this. One thing we did like was the Time Bandits feel of it, where the idea that you actually get to interact with people that the aliens had kidnapped in the past, and then sort of unite with them against the aliens. That was a fun aspect of it. I enjoyed that because I'm a big Time Bandits fan.
Oh yeah, I think for me the real treat from Zeta was just seeing something wildly different that I did not expect the engine to pull off. Because playing Fallout 3 and the Pit, and that kind of like set my baseline for what the DLC was capable of. And then seeing, hey, I'm in space, there are aliens. This is great. I mean, yeah, it was not necessarily my favorite of the DLCs, but I enjoyed it for so many different reasons that I thought it was great.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to take a detour, but that guy from Mars, I was one of the winners of the Gamers Tavern Fallout Haiku contest a year ago. Not to sound ungrateful. What happened to the pen and paper RPG? The host that was a prize. Okay, guy from Mars. So Gamers Tavern is a podcast that deals with gaming, and if I recall correctly, I didn't realize the actual pen and paper RPG was the prize. I thought props from the pen and paper RPG were the prize. And what I mean by that was when we were doing the Van Buren / Fallout 3 pen and paper game back at Interplay, we actually had like little handouts and cards we gave the players, like, hey, you can use doctor skill per day, so you get 3 doctor's cards to use for whenever you want, or here's an inventory item we have like glued onto a postcard, and that becomes part of your inventory. But my understanding was that was what they were giving away, not the actual pen and paper game, which I don't think we could actually give away if we wanted to. But yeah, I'm sorry if that was promised. That was never my understanding. Would you prefer to date a Deathclaw or a Cazador? Oh, that's easy. Because they don't make that noise the Cazadors make. That was oh my god, that buzzing noise. I'm just like, that's almost the worst part of them until they attack you. Oh, yeah. And this is Stripe.
Oh yeah.
He's got like 1,000 hit points or something.
Not only can you scale them bigger, you can scale them smaller.
Yep. And he lives in the doghouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Charlie Staples grabbed me one day. He goes, "You have to see this. It's a doghouse." And he's like, "Approach it." And then that thing came out, and it savaged me. I'm just like, "Oh, you guys!" That or the legendary bloatfly that Jeff Huskus put in. Ooh. That was the worst.
And if you notice, it says Gabe down there, but has been replaced, right?
Oh, looks like we have John Burke back on the channel, Iridian Game Dev.
Ooh. John Burke had to fix the most amazing bugs in the world.
He had to fix all the bugs. He was one of our only programmers on the DLC.
John Burke, I'm like, oh, thank God he's here. We had one problem. Was it the Night Terrors? Not Night Terrors. What the hell were they?
No, that's what we have, Chris, after the project.
Oh. Wow.
And then you got silent.
Yes, because then it occurred to me that maybe going down that thread may not be a good idea. But thank you, John.
John did save me when I broke the build that one time.
Everybody's broken the build. We had to break the build dance. That was a special one.
Yeah, we thought the creature design for New Vegas was so bizarre. Like it was so weird that like, oh, okay, well you have these stalkers running around, but they have like, you know, snakes coming out of their head. We're like, how the hell did that happen? And Old World Blues was a desperate attempt to try and explain that. I think one of the artists, Brian Menzie, was like, you know, what we could do is actually just have an entire lab where there's these pictures like from a kid's coloring book that shows all these creatures, and then someone's throwing darts at it. and then they end up creating a combination of whatever they throw darts at and hit. And I'm like, yeah, that would probably make about as much sense as the actual creature design.
That's an interesting question that I kind of am curious about. The Ben Grimm asks for Chris, what was your pen and paper Fallout campaign like? I saw a lot of references to it in the Fallout Bible. Did it differ greatly from Fallout 1 and 2? Did any moments from playing make their way into the video games?
It did not differ very much from Fallout 1 and 2, and a good chunk of it actually did appear in New Vegas, but not all of it. No, the Boulder Dome and Old World was part of it. We used to have Hoover Dam was a big location, the pen and paper game, the Caravan Wars, NCR, the Nightkin going crazy from the Stealth Boy technology was directly taken from the pen and paper game. And I gotta tell you, like playing pen and paper game, that's the most inspiring way for design ideas. Like we had one designer, John Diley, who wanted to play like a stealth super mutant. And I'm like, how the hell would that work? And I'm like, well, maybe he's a Nightkin, because they were supposed to be like the stealthy guys. But then I wanted to see if we could do something more with the character. So I'm like, oh, well, maybe not only has he, you know, got the Nightkin culture, but after hundreds of years of using the Stealth Boy technology, they just start going crazy because it, you know, interferes with alpha waves and like starts messing with the brains. And that's where the idea of like the Nightkin becoming just like completely nutty over time was because of the pen and paper games. So, like little bits like that we would take and just run with it.
Oh, Chris, I just noticed we are 25K away from our 1.3 million stretch goal, which will add additional locations and expanded narrative. We should just name that one the Chris Avellone stretch goal, because that's pretty much just going to be all your work. Like you're just going to be writing all these characters.
Damn, I'm cracking my knuckles. I'm good to go. Oh, Daniel's using the proton axe. Yeah, that was another nod to Wasteland. You know what? We should really have the proton axe from Wasteland there too. Umberstone. Wow, Umberstone's asking like a question. Why was the design changed so much from Vegas? So, in Van Buren, Hoover Dam was supposed to be a community, and that was built from all the wreckage that had floated down the Colorado River and had backed up against the Hoover Dams. They actually built out like flotillas and docks from it. As to why that wasn't used in New Vegas, I really can't say, but building Hoover Dam in New Vegas was in itself in terms of geometry that I'd be surprised if they could have added any more to it.
Ooh, this is a fascinating question and potentially a very dangerous one. So not everybody should feel free to answer it. What are your guys' favorite pieces of content that got cut from games you were working on? I know my story, and I've told it before, so I'm comfortable with this one. So I'll give mine first, and then Chris can think of what he can talk about safely. So something that I was working on in New Vegas, which I was so sad that we couldn't do, but we really wanted to do, was a Wild Wasteland radio station. Back in the day, I used to listen to Art Bell and like wacky, just sci-fi radio shows. And since we already had the Wild Wasteland perk, I wanted to have a radio station in the game where players could tune into it, and it would kind of be an Easter egg where we would have a host voiced by somebody, and we would have members of the development team calling in, and it would be horrible voice acting because, I mean, not everybody's a voice actor on the dev team, and we would have them call in and just share these wacky stories. I mean, we would write them, and they'd be pre-scripted, but it would be members of the team just basically sharing these weird stories. For example, one of them, the example our lead producer, or maybe executive producer, I forget, it's been so long, Larry Liberty. The example was we were going to have him call in as a guy who thought he was a superhero in the wasteland, and he would call into the radio show asking if the host had any leads on any supervillains and evildoers. And we were just gonna kind of play it straight like that, and we were gonna have everybody on the team kind of think of what sort of role they'd want to play in the Wacky Wasteland radio station. And the other thing we wanted to do is you would only be able to tune into it if your character was wearing a tinfoil hat. Yeah, there's like a whole doc on this and everything. I put a lot of time into it. By the way, I was going to be the radio host because I was just really into this.
Of course you were.
That's brilliant. Like, that's also would have been a great developer commentary.
It would have been a cool Easter egg, and it would have just been fun for the team. And we got Jason Bergman he loved it. However, the stopping point was that we would have had to have localized it, and localizing the VO for that would have defeated the purpose, because then there would have been voice actors that sounded much better than the English version, which was the developers. And so localizing the developer VO Easter egg didn't make sense from a cost standpoint, and it just kind of broke down. And it was not acceptable to have any English spoken VO in the localized versions of the game. So it was at an impasse, and so we couldn't do it. But I really, really wanted to, and that would have been really, really fun. So that's my story.
Man.
That's a really good story. How are we supposed to top that?
Jessica, I have nothing. I'm like,
Mic drop.
There was this time I went +5 sword to Icewind Dale, but then Icewind Dale already had a +5 sword. It was sad. That's my story.
Anything? I didn't know that would be that like I didn't think it was a big deal. I figured there would be like more stuff like, yeah, we were going to be working on this crazy level. We are going to fight this boss, but we had to cut it because it was just too awesome. Like, I thought there was going to be stories like that.
Well, we did have to cut a lot of locations in Fallout 2, but that was a good thing because the game was already overscoped and there was plenty of fun already to be had. There's a lot of things I wish we'd cut, but we didn't. So, wow, oh my God, sorry. I think Daniel's sniping is creeping me out. I'm like, wow, he's got a lead. He's got a pretty good range of those two lobotomites down there. Oh, also, by the way, the lobotomites were supposed to be a homage, not an homage, but an explanation of this beautiful wallpaper that one of our artists, Justin Sweet, did, or Justin Sweet or Vance Kovacs did back at Black Isle, where it has the classic Vault Dweller guy being attacked by all these guys with like metal jaws. And I'm like, wouldn't it be interesting if we actually had those guys in Old World Blues? And those were the ones being referenced in the piece of art. So we had these lobotomites that had their brains removed and weren't terribly intelligent as a result. And that was part of the inspiration for the creatures. And also they were really cheap to make. So, oh, why not?
Well, we're now 24K away from the Chris Avellone stretch goal. Man, if we hit that while you're on the air, like talking with everybody, that would be amazing. Hint, hint, tell all your friends, back System Shock.
Yeah, we've only got 1 hour.
Well, 1 hour for this
Chris.
Thing. Yeah,
Yes.
for Chris.
Chris
But
to
I
be
mean,
on
there's
when it
18 hours
happens.
left in System Shock. But if you want to make that magical moment happen, so you can get Chris's reaction when his own stretch goal is met, like wait for it. Like do what you can.
No, Jason, don't make me write in more Showdown. God, I so much. I would be so awful. I couldn't stand it.
Oh no. And then I want you to like temp VO Showdown for me. So I'll just put a microphone in front of you and you can start recording it.
Oh, it's one of the trauma harnesses he found. Yeah, that's the skeleton model that I mentioned that Kevin Manning had built. We just put a spacesuit on it. We're like, okay, it's a trauma harness.
Those things were scary.
They worked really well. Like they were a perfect example of like if you have little to no resources, what can you make happen? Yeah, that was a pretty important lesson. So,
wait, it was never revealed who Mr. New Vegas was? I thought it was obvious who the voice actor was. That was Wayne Newton. Oh, he's the only person in the world that sounds like him. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure we credit him too.
Did were they talking about the voice actor or who like?
Oh,
who he actually was?
okay. I see.
So wasn't he just like a tiny AI? He was like a little radio.
It's been so long. I don't remember.
I don't remember either. I think I didn't do any of the writing for Mr. He was good reactivity though. Like I think that was...
I've noticed that this is one of the problems that you encounter when you bring developers on for commentary for games where it's been like several years since they've made that game. We ran into that yesterday with the System Shock developers. We had Warren Spector, Paul Neurath, and Tim Stelmach on here. And they're like, "Hey, so what were you thinking when you made this level?" And like, that was 20 years ago. I have no freaking idea.
Yeah, as a developer, that's when it gets embarrassing because I think that people assume that you remember every single thing about everything developed. I always admired Nielsen for just being like front out honest and saying, you know what, that was 5 years ago. I don't remember, and I'm like, wow, you know what? Thank you for making it okay for that to be an answer because I assume like I just worry that people think we have an eidetic memory when it comes to development.
It always amazes me how many things are in games I've worked on that I didn't know was there because it wasn't part of what I was working on. And particularly just those little fun facts about the game that you only discover after the game came out and people on the internet start talking about them.
Yeah, and this is for the audience out there, like working in games, you don't always get to fully play the game you're working on. So sometimes that ends up being an obstacle in the sense of you actually just can't sit back for like a week or 2 weeks and play the game. Like it's mostly I'm hunting for bugs, you're trying to fix a particular issue, or I'm focused on this one level to make sure all the doors work. Like it rarely allows you to sit back and actually enjoy it until it comes out. And then sometimes it'll come out and you're like, oh my God, I can't keep playing this because I see all the stuff that should have been.
It ruins the experience in some ways. I mean, I've actually asked this question to some of our former colleagues that worked on New Vegas, and they had a hard time. Like some of them actually never played the game all the way through because I mean we've lived it, and going back, I mean you're just all you notice are the problems, and you can't truly enjoy it like a fan with fresh eyes. That's kind of one of the double-edged swords of working in the game industry is you run the risk of that. I think the only game I worked on that was an exception. That was World of Warcraft because there was always new crap to find. That game never ended. Always new guild drama to deal with. Like the devs never coded that in.
But yes, I find it very hard to play games that I worked on because most of the time what I find myself doing is finding things I still think need to be fixed.
Yeah, it's a cringeworthy experience. Like, and even if a player is absolutely enjoying it, all are the subtractions, and I wish I'd done that better, or ooh, I hope they don't test the floor geometry in that area. And we used to have a tester, Anthony, back at Obsidian, who would take every single Unreal game he'd play, and he'd find a way to break it because he knew so much about how to break Unreal from that. He's like, I bet I can break Arkham Asylum. And then he just did it. He's like, yeah, I know how to level transition with Unreal. I can just do it.
I'm seeing this question a bit. This isn't Fallout related. I can't find it anymore, but somebody's been asking a few times, what are our favorite movies? Let's start with Jessica.
Blade Runner, definitely.
Yep.
Pan's Labyrinth, love that movie. I'm really bad at favorites lists because I like different things about different movies. Somebody else can throw ones out while I'm thinking.
Let's go to Chris. I talk too much.
I have two categories. I have popcorn movies, which I recognize are not great movies, but are just wildly entertaining. And then I have movies that I just like. I mean, and I don't know if these are like top 10, but some of the recent ones that I recall enjoying a lot was like, I really love Big Hero 6. I thought that was pretty cool. And, you know, it hit me in the feels. And then I also enjoyed Looper a great deal. I thought Looper was awesome. In terms of more recent movies, nothing really jumps to mind. I like a lot of the earlier stuff. I thought Barton Fink and Blood Simple, and a lot of the movies they did early on were pretty fantastic.
About a Boy, totally not a gamer movie, but I love that movie.
Well, I find gamer movies to usually be pretty. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
That guy from Mars just hit my favorite movie, The Princess Bride.
Oh yeah, that's got to be on there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I find any movie that you quote on at least a semi-regular basis is probably one of your favorite movies.
That is
And
true.
if that's the case, then I guess Kung Pao Enter the Fist would be one of my favorites. Ex Machina was amazing. I think in like the last 10 years, any Duncan Jones movie, I love that man. And Source Code was, I think, one of the best time travel movies that I've seen. Like I'm a real stickler for time travel physics, and most movies just do wacky, dumb Back to the Future style time travel logic. Back to the Future is an amazing movie, don't get me wrong, but the temporal mechanics in it are kind of junk. Jessica knows, like I am a huge stickler when it comes to temporal mechanics. And then Moon was an amazing movie. And Warcraft, I enjoyed it. Some people gave it flack, but I played WoW for a while, and it was a great movie for what I was expecting as both a WoW developer and a WoW player.
Keeping it with Source Code, this may have actually been a discussion while the movie, but I almost wish they just lopped like the last 5 minutes off, because it almost ended perfectly.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, man, that if they just cut it right there, it's fantastic. But no, they just had to keep over-explaining for the audience. But yeah, maybe a little bit sad.
Oh, any Nicolas Cage movie is a popcorn movie for me. Yes, and I loved Primer. The second movie that guy did, I think it was called Upstream Color, was a little too weird for my liking, but I loved Primer. Primer and Predestination was also amazing. That was an underrated, kind of unknown movie that was based on I think a Robert Heinlein novel, All You Zombies. And Predestination had Ethan Hawke, and Ethan Hawke is just great in sci-fi movies, Gattaca especially. My God, I could talk about movies forever. I'm gonna just shut up now. Sorry.
Well,
See, I don't read books because I watch too many movies and TV.
Gattaca was pretty good. Like I wouldn't say like I was happy to watch it, but I just thought it was a really good movie, and I watched it. That's a sign of a great movie right there. And Gattaca was great. So Exolate has asked this like 3 or 4 times. Talk neutrally about Fallout 2. Can I ask his broader thoughts on this game? Yes. So Fallout 2. Fallout 2 was an example of what I feel can happen when you don't have a strong creative lead, a strong lead designer, or like all that is like the worst perfect storm ever. The issue.
Would you call that a perfect shitstorm?
It could be. So many stuff just went crazy from that aspect. And what I mean specifically is, so we didn't have like the oversight that Fallout 1 did. It's like, if you ever had a question about content, or if someone ever wanted to, how do I put this? Make sure the content was consistent. It always felt like Jason Leonard and there to make sure that the franchise feel was kind of enforce is probably a bad word, but they'd set a compass point for it. And Fallout 2, that compass was everywhere. Like every area felt different. There was a lot of just bizarre elements to it. Like the idea of talking animals, I thought was quite frankly really dumb. And then there was talking death claws, and I could go on for death claws is not the world's best idea. You take something scary and then you turn it into a thinking creature, and then suddenly you've understood the entire future. It's like, well, what if the aliens could talk and they were just trying to reason with us? So Sigourney Weaver was just killing us. It's not an interesting question. Like no one cares. Everyone just wants everyone wants to fight aliens because they're scary. That's why they're there. And there were so many decisions like, creative vision was sort of being applied the whole game. And so you had a whole bunch of jokes and inside references and Easter eggs because there wasn't anyone sort of at the wheel. And then the overall arc for the game was delivered poorly. Like the whole Frank Horrigan character was terrible. His introduction was terrible. I mean, you see him in cutscenes where you watch him kill people and you can't do anything about it. Like, what kind of game? That's not even Fallout. Like, that's the worst orchestrated cutscene ever. Like, it's dumb. And then production kind of checked out. A lot of our programmers in the company checked out, and I don't want to work on it too. But Fallout 2 really needed the help. Like, we had a lot of bugs and stuff. We really needed people to help out on. And the company needed us a lot on it. So that was kind of depressing too. Like, when you're sitting there hitting the 80-hour mark, trying to fix all your bugs, and like people down the hall are like playing Shogo or multiplayer game of the week. It's just frustrating. So overall, I think it was mostly there usually isn't enough time for any project, but Fallout 2, we really felt it. And then it was also really disorganized in terms of bringing it to completion. And then there just wasn't any sort of overall design vision, and it wasn't managed very well. So all of that sort of created a big soup of a game, which is still kind of fun, but it's not really as good as it could have been. And I don't, there's more content in Fallout 2, but it's not necessarily better quality content. So it was an important learning experience for me, what it means. The importance of what a good producer really does. And I have to give kudos to Jason here. I don't think I really understood how good producers could be until I got to Obsidian. And I worked with Jason, like I worked with Matt Singh, I worked with Brandon Out. All those guys showed me what a good producer does on a daily basis that actually improves the quality of a game rather than just sits. And that was an eye-opening experience. So if you ever doubt your producer, examine that producer closely. But chances are there may even be a much better producer. Anyway, blah blah blah. Fallout 2.
It's not an interesting question, but I'm going to warp it a little bit so it applies to all of us. What got you into what you're doing in the game industry? And let's start with Jessica.
I think I already touched on this a little bit, but I actually was originally more into writing and also into theater, set design, and lighting design. And I loved playing games as a hobby, but I thought that was sort of an unattainable job for me. Thought you had to be like awesome programmer or artist or something in order to get involved with that. And the games I loved tended to be things like Ico or Zelda, where it was sort of that puzzle platformer exploration kind of game. And then I ended up going to the Guild Hall at SMU. A friend from college sent me their website and was like, you should do this. You'd be perfect for this. And it took me a couple of years, but I finally applied, got in, and the rest is history.
For me, this is going to be sappy.
Good.
So I think it started when I was 4 years old. My dad got a Commodore 64, and he got me into playing video games. And we just had this routine where it would be like an adventure game, the old LucasArts games, where he and I would play those games together and just swap the mouse back and forth. And that was a great bonding experience. And my parents divorced when at a young age. And at that point, all I really had, I sucked at making friends. I was socially awkward, but my dad was still there playing games with me. And he's probably the greatest inspiration that I've had for getting into the game industry. I mean, my choice was I could either get into the sciences or make video games. And when I came down to that choice, it actually became a very clear decision, because I just looked back on my childhood and how much of an influence games had been, and how strong of a bond I had developed with my father from playing games together. And I wanted to find ways of just capturing those moments and inspiring others to have those experiences. Because I mean, at the end of the day, games aren't real, but the connections and feelings that they inspire and create are very real. And that's kind of what I want to strive to do. I want I want to see if I can help and like leave my mark on the world in that capacity. And so ultimately that's pretty much why I got into games. I mean, if I really had to think about it, and I mean, yeah, there's my dad's probably listening to this right now thinking, ah, damn it, son, you told him the story. But whatever, it's all fun. But that's pretty much it for me. And I'm not going to talk about my path into games because for me, it's more just about the emotional connection of what inspired me to do it in the first place. Sorry for the feels, guys.
No, to piggyback off of what Jason's saying though, like to bring it back to the mod community and seeing people make works inspired by work that you put out there, that's what makes it so gratifying, because you see them being creative because you gave them a spark to work with and they turn into a fire and they make something awesome. That's really gratifying to see. Like it's why I got started in game development. Like there are inspirations for that, but the fact that you could spitball off of something like that and have a happy career, that's great. I'm sorry, it's a really quick detour because there's a guy. He asked what I think of the Stalker series, and the reason I wanted to call that question out is because for two reasons. One is the interface for hardcore mode in New Vegas actually took a lot of inspiration from Stalker, if I recall correctly. And the second thing is Stalker always reminded me of this really great called Roadside Picnic, which the premise of the book, just really quickly, is Earth is a place where aliens occasionally would stop and they dump off junk. Now the trick was, to them it's junk, but to Earth it has all sorts of crazy technology forming the planet. And it was a great book, and the fact that you actually sort of play an environment like that in Stalker, I thought was pretty cool. So anyway, I just wanted to address that question because it was very New Vegas related.
I'm so distracted now. I can't even read questions. My brain is just going down like the feels and nostalgia road.
Someone asked me what my favorite area to design was. I guess New Vegas, probably the Dead Money. I did the casino floor and the entry, and I really liked working on that area, both because it was kind of the hub, so I had to work with all of the other designers on how the transition works between my area and their area, and I really liked the juxtaposition of the very luxurious environment that's just been so destroyed, and getting to play with that and sort of the surreal nature of that area. So
we had an interesting lore. Dead Money, like as irritating as loot placement was in most of the DLC, it was actually more irritating in Dead Money because it was supposed to be isolated from the rest of the Fallout world due to circumstances, which meant that the loot tables for the DLC logically required modifications. So we're like, okay, well, there's certain things that exist out in the wasteland, like Jet, for example, that never would have been Sierra Madre because they wouldn't have been. And the amount of culling we had to do through loot tables to sort of make it like pre-war appropriate was pretty exhausting and definitely arguably not worth the effort. But sometimes you have to be careful, like sort of disrupt the war for an area. It's something you just sort of have to keep in mind.
Yeah, Dead Money was, I mean, that was our first one, and we tried some new and crazy things, and the difficulty level and it was interesting on it. But I think the thing that impressed me the most about that was just the amount of research that we did to mentally get ourselves into that headspace, and just how quickly we were able to turn around such a very narrative-rich area. I think that only took us maybe 2 or 3 months to make. And
there was still a lot of New Vegas work to be done too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we were
it wasn't
doing
even a
both
full
at the same
team
time.
on it.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
that consumed most of the time. That was so depressing.
Although oddly, I think for Dead Money, I was still sort of on that high of coming off of the actual game. I totally for Honest Hearts, I can't even remember like working on it at this point. It was like I came off of Dead Money and just still going, and I can remember it. And then when we hit Honest Hearts, it was kind of like everything had just become such a blur that I can kind of remember the area I'd worked in, but the process of it is totally lost.
It was all just a blur. I don't remember it going by.
Oh, he got to Muggy. Muggy's talking.
Oh, I love Muggy.
Can you do anything else?
Oh my God.
I just hear Travis through
Travis
this.
did such a good job. Oh, he's so good.
Oh, wow, that's an interesting question. Would a standalone sort of game like Dead Money be a possibility? I mean, probably not a follow game, but something of that tone. Chris, is that necessarily something you really want to bring your mind back to? Is that kind of grim, dark, dismal sort of thing?
Well, so there were a lot of errors with Dead Money. One, over the core New Vegas experience. We did want to deliver a survival horror experience. After you demo the game for about 100 people, you suddenly realize that all anybody does is headshots. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe if we shuck up the monsters, so you have to do like some additional mechanic to kill them, like would be interesting. But actually, that's not really what players want. They do want to blow the heads off of creatures because that's what they remember from the core game. And they also want to run around with 2,000 stem packs and just have an open world experience. So to deprive them of that, I think is not the best move. Someone's asking here, did anyone play Steel from Dead Money? Oh, okay. Well, so first off, we didn't mention the Circle of Steel in Dead Money. It wasn't until Old World Blues that we even hinted that Circle of Steel exists because of Christine's sniper rifle. And Circle of Steel, for the audience out there, Circle of Steel was another sort of Civil War faction in Van Buren. And their whole deal was they were a small sort of hidden agenda group within the Brotherhood of Steel, but they believed that the Brotherhood of Steel was sort of relaxing their too much, and they really wanted the Brotherhood to go back to the core ideals that founded and saved them. But they were sort of like a really ruthless, like Black Ops intelligence organization, who was, if they were there, who was a member. And what was worse was the Circle of Steel was using the same stealth boy technology that the Nightkin had been using. And the problem with that was, which the player would likely know more than the brother, is the more you use those stealth boys, the crazier you get. So the Circle of Steel was not only all about the subterfuge and trying to manipulate things from behind the scenes, they were also going crazy from all the stealth boy use. So that was even worse. So the only hint that we ever officially had of that was Christine's sniper rifle of Steel. Yeah. So anyway, that's to answer that question.
Sorry, no more today. Try me again tomorrow.
Oh, actually, that's a good point. The person was asking if Chris would be up for making another survival horror game, but that's pretty much System Shock. So, Chris, are you up for more System Shock?
Hell yes. I love survival horror. I loved Amnesia. Like, I loved Resident Evil. I love those games very much.
We are now 23K away from the special Chris Avellone stretch goal, and 30 minutes away if you'd like to see Chris's reaction with hitting that. So if you know people that haven't backed the game yet, harass them or tell them how cool it'll be, all that fun stuff. And then Chris will do a little dance on the microphone. You won't see it, but you'll probably hear it.
I don't know.
To answer a question from DLC, Kanan and Jericho, yeah, they weren't developed obviously for New Vegas, although they may have hinted about. Honest Hearts was probably the DLC I was least involved with. I did have a list of narrative requests that I made for the DLC, which actually, if I hadn't checked 2 weeks before production was done, I wouldn't have discovered that none of them had been done. So that was kind of a backpedaling, desperate. Let's figure out what we can do in that time period. And it's really weird that like the list had been, pretty early on in the project, but I guess it just had drifted off somewhere. But the big goal for the narrative requests for Honest Hearts was that was going to be the first instance where you got a hint as to what Ulysses' motivation might be and where he was coming from. So it was important that it be introduced there, just so the player had some more backstory to work with. But not all the requests were able to get in there, but enough of them were to keep the story going.
Guess you could say I got the blues.
Oh yeah, even the jukebox talked. Everything talked in that room.
Yeah, the jukebox voice actor we had considered using for Dean Domino and Dead Money because he had this beautiful raspy voice, but we brought him back for Old World Blues because his audition was so good.
Question: what was the funniest glitch you've seen in New Vegas?
That's less than optimal.
Jessica, what was the funniest glitch you saw?
I don't know.
Oh, I know mine. This has a story, but I think this is just no. I'm not doing this again. This is a big one. So I'm letting everybody else go first because I felt bad last time.
I don't have a glitch I thought was.
Maybe I just have a good memory with this stuff. Okay. Do you guys remember Bob from accounting and that bug? Okay, so let me set this one up. You guys don't remember this one. So we get a bug from Bethesda QA, and it is one of the weirdest bugs we've ever seen. And it starts with saying, when starting Honest Hearts, the room goes black and Bob from accounting is standing in a room and starts talking to the player and the game crashes. Like, what? That's not supposed to happen.
As I said, Honest Hearts was Blur, but yeah, I kind of.
Oh, you'd remember that. And
yeah.
And the weird thing is, what's supposed to happen is you interact with a cave and you go through and Honest Hearts starts. Who is Bob from accounting? What is happening? It just sounded like a joke. It didn't make any sense. And we investigated. It was Jeff Huskus, I think, that because I had to dig into the GAC, and sure enough, there was an NPC named Bob from accounting, and Jeff Huskus had him, and I forgot why he was there exactly, but it was some kind of a script glitch where it was maybe a temp character or something, and there was some bug that happened. And if you were to start Honest Hearts with a certain thing in your inventory or some weird issue, you would be in a dark room with Bob from accounting, and he would try to talk to you, and he would just crash your game. And like this is some creepy, weird game getting aware sort of. Yeah, Bob was a mean guy. But we fixed that one. But that was probably the weirdest thing that I think I saw on the project, and the most hilarious because when we saw the bug, we thought, wait, is Bethesda just playing with this? This doesn't make any sense. But no, sure enough, it was a legitimate bug.
For Fallout fans out there, RPG fans, the Jeff Huskus was one of our hardcore level designers. He's been doing RPGs for so many years.
Yeah, he's awesome.
I can safely say that many of our RPGs would never have shipped, nor at the quality level, without Jeff Huskus. Like, he is an unsung hero that deserves, like, him and Travis, like, they just do an amazing job, and you're just like, oh, thank God that all got taken. Jeff Huskus. You're like, wow, he made all that happen. Thank you, Jeff.
I agree wholeheartedly. Jeff is awesome. Not as good as Bob from accounting, but I was talking about the force fields earlier, and I do remember there was a bug that I had the hardest time with, which was in Old World Blues. There was a force field that had ammo, or had a gun and ammo behind it. That was supposed to be an awesome thing that you got when you managed to figure out how to take down the force field. And I guess when you got the force field gun that could take down the force field. And NPCs in that area, if they ran out of ammo, would run through the force field and steal your loot. And so then you couldn't get it because they stole it from you before you could ever get it.
That is like a super dick move. Thanks, monsters.
Oh, gosh, just remember another one. This wasn't a glitch, but this falls in the category of stuff that we should have removed from the game that wasn't supposed to be in the game that fans just found and were confused what it was. So I did a lot of technical stuff on the project. I did some programming, some production work, and I made a test level to test out some of the new things we were doing. And I made a test weapon to test everything else. And it was a stupidly overpowered weapon, like a one-shot, one-kill kind of thing, rapid fire. And I'm like, what should I name this damn thing? I'll just name it the Faderator. And so there's this gun reference in there, and it doesn't spawn anywhere else. It's just in this test room. But I guess the fans found it, and there's like a Fallout Wiki entry for it, and they were confused for the longest time what it meant, what it was doing. And like, oh, I should have deleted that thing, but I didn't think to. I mean, barely any of us. I mean, we left so much extra stuff in there, and that's just happens with game development. You just lose sight of some temporary things that you use for 1 week and forget to clean it up, and then it ends up making it in the final product. And then fans are confused, and then they just have their own theory as to what this thing meant. And I remember there was like some fan theory that it was a special weapon that was cut, and that it was like made for me. And like, no, I actually just made that myself, and it was just so I could test things. Sorry, it's not more interesting than that. There were a lot of cows in my test level because I like testing on Brahmin, but that was pretty much the extent of it. Not that I have anything against cows. It's just that was the best way to test physics stuff because they were like very very bulbous and bulky. But yeah, that's not a very interesting story.
There was always a NPC in Black Isle, please. And he was always the test character that would always be put at the front of every level to test all the scripts and the quests. And he just
you cut out for a second, Chris. What was the name of that character?
Testostocles.
Testostocles? Okay,
Yes.
just checking.
Wait a moment. Pencil processors
I believe we brought that in as well in New Vegas, but I
really?
think yes, but we typoed the name and there was no OS. It wasn't Testostocles. It was Testostocles without the os. I think it was Charlie Staples that put that in. I might be mistaken. That was so long ago.
Charlie is also an unsung hero. Charlie and Tyson,
amazing.
Great lead level designers. Great, perfect union of management skills and the ability to get stuff done. And they keep their cool. Like, yeah, Charlie and Tyson are awesome.
So you'll have to perform your own indoctrination.
Cool. We are at the 25-minute mark. So should we just open it up just to pure questions or drunken anecdotal stories? What does the Twitch audience want to hear as we wind down to our final last chunk of time? And it'll take 20 seconds still to hear that. I'm trying to think of like other interesting stuff to talk about.
I guarantee that if they ask us questions, find a happy medium between, oh, that reminds me of a story of this.
Were Veronica and Christine lesbians?
Yes, they were very much in love. And that was the big problem. Elijah, because Elijah was very pragmatically prejudiced. He viewed any same relationship as unproductive for a post-apocalyptic world because we need people to breed. And it was the most insulting thing ever. And conflict between Veronica and Christine and Elijah.
Oh, I just remembered something else that was cut. Do you guys remember the radioactive wind Brahmin?
No.
Oh, come on. Why do I remember these weird...
The tumbleweeds? Are you
Yeah, the tumbleweeds. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we were... Oh, this was going to be so cool. So there was like a crazy rancher that was like raising wind Brahmin, but they were tumbleweeds. But he was like totally convinced they were like sentient and conscious and everything. And if I don't know if any part of this made it into the final game, but if you bought one off of him, it would like follow you around, but not like not closely, like out of the corner of your eye, you'd like see it like 30 feet away. It just like tumbling across, and it was the same one. Like if you were to like zoom in on it with your crosshair, it would be named, and it would just like always be like in the periphery, just like, is that it, or am I going crazy? And that's kind of like what we wanted for the. I'm not sure like how it's been so long. I don't know how much of that actually got in.
I don't think, because I remember talking about having the tumbleweed basically stalking you.
Yeah.
And I don't think that actually got in. I think the wind Brahmin farm did make it in, but I don't think the tumbleweed that followed you did. If I remember.
Yeah, like imagine Rubber, the movie Rubber, where the tire is sentient, except now it's a tumbleweed.
Oh my God, Rubber.
Yeah.
That was a hell of a movie. So one question from Ginger's Winger. Wow. Now reading out loud, it becomes more fun. Why nuke NCR? You can set a game further back in the timeline. Hey, you are correct. So let me explain NCR, because sometimes I get questions about this. Like, oh, Chris, why'd you want to destroy NCR? I don't want to destroy NCR. I want to make NCR more interesting. NCR is really boring. I don't like their president. I think since Tandy, it really hasn't been very interesting. Big group that's sort of spread out across the Mojave, but at their core, they're just not very compelling. It's hard for me to break down exactly where they fall flat, but I mean, they're a great source of quests. They can provide some degree of contextual information on an environment, but I'll be honest, like most of the locations.
Oh, you cut out for a sec, Chris.
I'm sorry. So what I was saying is, it got to the point like when I'd go into New Vegas and I'd see a location that NCR troops in it, I would almost groan because it was so. It just wasn't an appealing location. I'm like, okay, well, I'll probably get a lot of quests I most likely don't want. Organization that is interesting, isn't interesting. And I got part of this may be like Van Buren. It was more in Van Buren. NCR existed, but because it had gone to a hell of a war with the Brotherhood of Steel, NCR was a bit more scattered and broken. So sometimes what you'd encounter is these like splinter groups of like soldiers that had broken off from NCR. And I think it just added more energy and conflict to the setting. And I don't think the NCR in New Vegas really end up being a very strong faction. Like, I think Caesar's Legion has its weaknesses too, but NCR just never felt as interesting as Mr. House or Caesar himself. And I guess that's kind of the problem I have with it. I'd prefer that things be shook up a little.
Oh, crap. Guess who's here? I need to add him and give him access to stuff. But we have Dan Rubalcaba in the channel.
Oh, yeah.
Let me fix his permissions and stuff. Okay, while I'm doing that, somebody in the channel, I really want to get to this quickly. They asked why wasn't there a radio station with No Bark Noonan as the host? So No Bark Noonan, for those of you that don't remember, is a wily eyed crazy character in Novak, and I remember him so well because I had to voice every character in Novak at one point for Temp VO, and with Noonan. He was fascinating to voice, mainly because of his lines, and so I imagined him as an elderly Butters from South Park, and voiced it that way. And he was crazy. So the final voice is totally different than my own interpretation of him. But I was really, really happy with how I was. Like when you walk into a store, it goes, "Who are you? Who sent you? Oh, I'm gonna get you." You know that kind of like wily stuff, and that was just kind of fun. Anyways, side thought. But now Dan is all set up, and I think we might be able to hear him. Dan, can you try speaking?
Hey!
It's Dan!
Are you ready to blow the lid off this thing?
It's Dan!
Yeah!
You are here for the final 20 minutes of this party.
Did I make it in time?
You made it in time.
Oh, man.
So let me introduce you to Twitch. So Twitch people, this is Dan Rubalcaba. He was one of our amazing programmers on New Vegas. And somebody was asking earlier, like, oh, you don't have programming representation. Well, now we do.
That's right. I don't remember anything about this game.
We're all finding we have that problem.
Yeah, it's been a while. John Burke has been in the chat for a while, not in the voice chat, but he's been in the Twitch chat.
Oh, how'd he get out of it?
Oh,
I'm kidding.
John Burke is always with us.
That's true. I feel him close to me.
It bothers my girlfriend sometimes, but I tell her to roll with it. Put on the hat.
I remember one thing about this game is that it came out on my birthday.
Did it?
October 19th. Yeah.
Nice.
Is that interesting? Does
That's
that
very
provide
interesting.
insight and depth?
I don't know, Dan, do you have any fun anecdotal stories from your time on the project? Anything that you'd want to share with the Twitch audience?
Oh, okay. Well, was very see. Do they want like the Vegas stories of like researching the game, or do they want like the we put in like a different level of detail system so that we could customize the distant night sky and put light pollution out there, to
I think they care less about that and they want to be entertained.
Oh, okay.
I could be
well,
wrong,
I mean,
though.
like,
If I'm wrong, feel free to ask Dan about his lighting solutions.
Can I ask Chris questions?
Oh, Dan.
I think we could do that, yeah.
Dan, I can hear you mentally cracking your knuckles.
Well, I mean, like, the Southern California game developer, the drive to and from Orange County and Vegas it's a sacred spiritual trek, right?
That is correct. It's a seemingly a 4-hour journey unless you to take a urination break at Zizix Road.
And yeah, exactly, Zizix. And we all kind of have our little landmarks along the way that we love. When I came onto the project, I was the second programmer that came on the project. It was just me and Frank for a little bit. I think even before you came on, Jason.
Oh, I joined 1 month after it started.
Oh, wow. Okay. But like a lot of the locations, a lot of the pre-planning had been done, and all these great locations, not just great like tourist spots, but also like spots people in Vegas care about, like the old schoolhouse and things. How did you generate that list of all those locations? Or was that Sawyer?
I think Sawyer did a motorcycle tour, but you're absolutely right. Like, I think a lot of the feedback that we still get about the game to this day is people driving from either LA or Orange County to Las Vegas will see a good chunk of the new Vegas location. Oh, look, there's Nipton. Oh my God. Oh, look, there's the the renamed Helios 1.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and so seeing those landmarks, yeah, you're just like, oh.
I remember the early phase of that. Actually, what we did was we went into Google Maps and just basically took the Google Maps version of that trip and then superimposed it on what we were planning, and then sort of divided things that way. So all the freeways and roads, like the angles of them, do line up with I mean, kind of like shrunk them for scale, but we tried to make it a bit more closer to scale with like the routes and everything. And Dan, have you been to Good Springs in real life?
I have been.
I've never been. I've always
trek.
wanted to go. I've heard it's now the new Vegas like mecca. Like, you just got to go there. And it's funny because I voiced Trudy. Oh God, that's right.
Have you seen that MasterCard commercial where like some nerds are outside the Good Springs saloon, the Pioneer Saloon?
No.
And then they meet some like tough locals, and they walk outside the bar, and it looks like it's going to be a fight, but instead they hug and then share pictures.
Nice.
I think they took that from our game. I think because I've heard stories of fans of New Vegas going to the Pioneer Saloon and like going around taking pictures, and the locals loving it.
I wonder if the Pioneer Saloon is a Pokestop, so maybe I can go there and catch myself some Pokemon.
I bet it is. I bet it's the only one for like 30 miles.
For a while.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think we did a great job not only encapsulating the route from Orange County to Vegas, but also the Vegas. I'm so terrified to say Nevada because I know there's a correct and wrong way. Nevada. Anyway. Was there any technical questions? Oh, I can see the chat.
I'm not seeing too many, but it's all zooming by so fast.
Begin. Big question for Dan by X
God.
Haley.
Oh,
Begin game mode.
Joke. Oh,
if danref is late, fire.danref. Else end if end. Well, yes.
It's funny that you're making fun of Dan for being late.
Yes.
That is not cool.
We had
Should I tell the story?
we had a tradition where whenever someone was late, usually me, You put your chair upside down on their desk. So
it wasn't a tradition. It was just for you, actually.
It was just for me? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. There was a couple things I think that was just for me.
Frank did it to like one other person, but you were the reigning champ of chair under desk.
I owned it. It was mine.
Yeah, I was like a lot, and they never did that to me.
Oh, there we go.
Well, Jessica, they wouldn't dare do it to you after the incident.
Oh, more questions. Yes, thank you, XLA, for I gotta find out who wrote that in the script then. I'm guessing it was Renard. Guessing that's a Renard special. Was there any other great sort of office rituals
I don't know.
we ever did?
We're down to 10 minutes, so I mean we need to now pick and choose our stories. There was the hootenanny dance whenever Justin would break the build.
Oh, Justin broke the build dance. He
Yes,
really did not like that dance.
No, he didn't.
It quickly became not okay to do that dance.
We didn't care. So it was Frank would find that the build was broken. He'd see that it was Justin that did it, and then he'd start walking down with like a bit of a swagger to his step, and Josh would come around and I would join in, and it was just I had no better way to describe it than a hootenanny dance, and we would just start saying how Justin broke the build.
It had lyrics too that were
it
developed.
Well, Josh is a great singer, so I mean, I don't remember any of the words. It was so long, but yeah, it was a treat.
You know, actually, New Vegas was the project New Vegas. I endured my biggest professional mistake I've ever made. I could probably tell that story real quick.
Dyeing your hair on both sides.
That was the best decision I've ever made.
That's actually pretty cool because when you turn to the side, you're like, well, I think that's Dan. But how did it change so fast?
Yes, I always have some sort of hair dye.
You were the most hipsterest, prettiest programmer I had ever met.
Now why you gotta throw that word around like it's bad? Yeah, I remember you would walk up to Justin and say, "It's Justin, the most beautiful programmer here at Obsidian, right in front of me, just to get me."
Oh yeah, well, because it was a competition. You two would be in the same office, so you're always trying to like one up one another with your clothing choices.
It wasn't really a competition. It just was true.
Wow.
Yeah, you're a handsome man, but Justin.
I know.
Can't compete.
I was handsome. I was very handsome in the 90s.
Oh, Dan, weren't you going to tell a story?
Yes. Okay. So the biggest sort of professional mistake I ever made. The technology we're using had a very unique quirk in that it was responsible for its own source control. So source control, normally you have a separate program, and that's how you back up all the work you do is your source control. That's sort of the simple explanation. But this had it built in. So when you're making modifications to the game and tools, you also might nip a wire and alter the source control. Which is exactly what I did one day.
Oh, you did that. I remember that.
And we didn't catch it until a week later. And when we identified a change I made that we had to revert a week worth of work, you know, like 30, 40 people working. That's like, I would have been responsible for 10 man months of work being erased.
Yeah. You cost us a lot of money, actually.
Yeah. But, well, if you remember, in between, after everyone went home, I got the diffs of all the changes commits to source control and applied them one at a time. There was like something like 300, 400 diffs, and it was like 5 minutes a piece. I was at work until like 6, 7 in the morning, getting all those changes reapplied. But there were random changes that couldn't be made. So like, I felt so bad. I bought the team donuts. I sent out so many like letters of apology that's like, if you see something the last week that you did and now it's undone, that's on me. Yes.
Well, you were good about it. I mean, you owned up to it well, and it didn't set us back too much because I mean we had backups of everything. So I mean, it's not like you killed a week of productivity. You just made a boo-boo, but
yeah,
you owned up to it and you fixed it.
I knew the code I was changing was touching the source control, so I did a bunch of tests and compared binary diffs before and after, and everything made sense. But you know, this tech was responsible for its own source control, so serializing, deserializing, there was some operation that could corrupt data, and we didn't catch it.
Some lawyer at Bethesda right now is like, has their finger on.
Yeah, see,
like, is it going to say something evil? No,
I'm being
don't.
very careful with my wording.
Yes, please do
Sounds like you will never find me. You're so easy to forgive. Like just for the audience out there, one of the best things about working with Dan was, as a gameplay programmer, he would actually storyboard out the gameplay mechanics, and sometimes it was hard to pay attention to the gameplay mechanics because of how Dan would draw the characters. You're like, oh, yeah, Dan worked on South Park too, and he would lay out like all the combat. To see what tortures he would put this poor PC avatar through was actually really fascinating to pay attention.
I just remember the first time I met you, like you actually had heard of an indie game that I had worked on, and I couldn't tell if you were being genuine or just trying to be a jerk. Because before I met you, like people warned me saying like, "Oh, that Dan guy, be careful, he's very snarky." And I'm like, oh, okay, this is definitely snark. But then you started like talking about, oh no, I love doing this and this, and it was so great. I'm like, huh, maybe this is genuine. Then sure enough, I looked you up a day later in our database, and there was your player character. I'm like, wow, you really did play my game.
Yeah,
and you liked it.
You really need to be less self-conscious about your indie game. It's great. You shouldn't immediately assume people are making fun of you. It was really good.
I mean, it's like that scene in Spaceballs where like Lone Star meets Yogurt for the first time. It's like, you've heard of me? It's like that. That was exactly how I felt. I was just floored.
That was great. Yeah. I was actually I wanted to extend your indie game, and I didn't know you were responsible for it. But I had. At that point, I think I had been working in the industry like probably 5 or 6 years. So I'm like, ooh, I wonder if I should contact these guys and then like throw around my weight and say like, I'd love to extend it if you could give me source control access. And I looked up who made it and your name came up. And so I contacted you the next day. I walked over to your office.
It's like, wait a second, I work with him.
Yeah, I was about to lie about my credentials to try to get your source code access. So I could play with your indie game that you made. But yeah, no, it was a good game.
Yep.
The game was Thread Space Hyperbole. For those
I wasn't gonna plug it. I'm trying not to double.
Oh, you bring up everything in the story but the name.
Okay, we're at the 5-minute mark. We have 5 minutes, so we need a what is the most entertaining thing we can do with the 5 minutes we have, guys? I have a feeling though this might not be the last time we bring the band together to talk about old war stories. I don't know. I mean, Twitch audience, would you guys like another one of these sessions at some point in the future where we just bring around these old and grizzled developers and just start talking about the crap we've done? I think that the more we have in here, like the more energy there is, and I don't know. I think it's really cool. Or maybe it's just Dan. I think Dan brings the energy.
Could be like I think this discussion has proved is that game development can be extremely messy, and it's a very unpredictable process. And it does. I wish it got easier over time. It feels like as technology expands, strangely enough, the more surprises lie in wait as you do games. So.
It might be messy and it might be tough at times, but damn it, it's the most rewarding and amazing thing I've ever done. Like I would not change it.
Would I rather work in a bank? No. And if I'm offending anybody who works in a bank, like that's okay. You guys are all mean. It's fine.
Jessica, you were saying something?
I was going to say, I think in a lot of ways, as the technology gets better, things sometimes get a lot messier.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, I mean, I think Chris has more stories about this than I do, but I think that's a universal constant, is that no matter how good the tech is, it's always messy.
Yeah, designers usually mess it all up, so.
Yeah, it's all our fault.
We're like, hey, programmers, guess what we think we just did that was bad? And then like the entire room just turns to face you and you're like,
well, the bigger and more complicated the game worlds get, the more cooks in the kitchen you have to have, which is always interesting.
Well, it's kind of a give and take with it, though, because the better the technology, the less people you'll need for some stuff. Like modeling basic shapes is much easier nowadays with modeling tools than it was like in the 90s. But now visual fidelity is being pushed more, so if you want to get things that look bleeding edge, you still need an army of people to do it. And so I think even though the tools are getting better, they're getting so much better that now expectations are increasing. And so I think team size also will probably be a constant. I mean, you're going to have the crazy huge teams that are 200 plus, and then the small indie teams that are like 4-man operations. And I think all flavors of them will make amazing content.
Yeah, one thing I enjoyed about the DLC was just because it was sort of mandated. You had to have a small team with a really focused goal, and the game's only going to be this long, and here's the only with. But it allowed like individuals on the team doing more stuff than they would in a larger team.
And you need to, I mean, and this is going to get into like a little soapbox here, but you really need to give yourself more credit for that. I mean, the DLCs were magical, and I don't say that lightly. I mean, it instilled such a strong family feeling on the team, and all of that was in large part to the leadership structure. I mean, not just me, but you. I mean, the whole team was brought together. We would hang out after hours. I mean, there was Friday night liquor Fridays where we'd all go out drinking, and there was just a lot of camaraderie going on, and it made the game all that much better because we were making a game with very close friends, and that feeling, that vibe is something that I can only dream of recapturing again in another studio.
And it was also nice that we weren't paying a lot of attention to, which is, by the way, in game fantastic. You're like, oh god, I'm under the radar. By the way, Jason, was it just Liquor Friday?
Yeah, I was gonna say Liquor Tuesday, Liquor Wednesday.
Well, okay, so there might be a story going around. Yes, I might have had a mini bar in my office, with a mini fridge, an assortment of hard liquors and mixers, and after hours there might have been like just small little soirees in my small office. That's all. Nothing special. Just after work, people just want to chit chat, just sit on the couch and talk about work or other things while sipping on a drink.
It's liquid motivation. It just keeps you going.
Yeah, and sometimes walking around with my coffee mug, after 4 o'clock, there might not have exactly been coffee in it, but whatever. I mean, I got work done.
I'm learning a lot. I suspected that second build machine was hollow and there was other things inside of it.
Right, it was actually a drink mixer. It was an elaborate slushy machine that made me pina coladas.
Build times were too slow for that second computer to drive anything but you. I knew it.
Dan, I thought you were going to jump in there and go, oh, as programmers, we just did crack. We're like, okay, well, you got us beat. That's fine.
Okay, we have 1 minute remaining. It looks like we will not be hitting the 1.3 million stretch goal, which will be the Chris Avellone stretch goal, if we've now lovingly named it. But with our final minute, is there any closing things that you guys want to say? Let's start with Jessica.
Been a lot of fun talking to everybody.
Okay.
And very weird to see the game again, so it's cool.
Oh yeah, it's like going through an old high school yearbook. It's like, oh, they were my friend. They made fun of me. Oh, that was a weird time in my life. Okay, Dan, any closing words, remarks?
Golly, this was
you just got here, but I mean that's what you do. You show up to a party late and you leave early.
My chair was upside down on my desk this whole time. This is a singularly unique project. It was a blast to work on. I came on and it was surprisingly well planned out. That's always nice as a coder to sort of have like all the features, all the big bullet points and technologies that we're planning on building for it all set up and planned out. And I think we knocked out most of them, so it was good.
Yeah, I think it was a great opportunity to return to Fallout too. Like I don't think anybody who'd worked in the previous Fallouts or hadn't worked in the Fallouts at all ever thought we'd have the chance to do it. So it was great to have that opportunity.
Yeah, I think for me it was definitely one of the biggest highlights in my career in the game industry. I mean, that and my time at Obsidian. I mean, I learned so much, and I got to learn from these giants in the industry that I'd grown up playing their games, and it was just awe-inspiring. And being able to work side by side with you, Chris, that was great. And then, occasionally sharing drinks with you and stuff. And it's a great feeling to start as a fan and then transition into a professional capacity and then work with somebody and then eventually call them my friend. And I think for me, that's the most rewarding thing is the game industry is actually enabled me to make so many new friends when it was hard for me to make friends growing up. And I love it. That's one of the coolest things about it. So if you guys think about getting into the game industry, I'd recommend it, but keep in mind that it's not easy and it will be tough. But at the end of the day, it is incredibly rewarding.
Oh yeah, if we're in the compliment section, I just want to say that Avellone is probably the most generous developer I've ever worked with. He elevates everyone around him. He enables other people to be better. And Fader, you're okay too.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Bell. Thanks, Bell. Yeah.
Yeah, it is
I'm bitter that I
amazing.
never gave you the cookies for your cookie points. You know, it's still coming.
It is amazing. Like when I came in to work on Fallout, just that feeling of I'm gonna get to work on a Fallout game, and I'm just this little, pretty new developer out here coming to work on this, and there really is nothing to match that feeling, particularly when it worked out as well as this game did. So
I will say for any budding developer, the game development community is very accepting, and we actually don't trust people that aren't socially awkward. So if you feel that you don't have a home, get into game development, because the only people we trust are the socially awkward ones.
Yeah, I actually trust people less if they're into sports.
Yeah, if they seem too balanced, I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
Unless you have corpses in your basement, like you failed the interview. I'm sorry, you're just too normal.
It doesn't seem like you could develop a proper obsession to get the work done. You're too balanced.
you have to be a little crazy
Or a lot.
or a lot crazy.
Okay, I think that's all the time we have. So I want to thank all of our guests, Chris Avellone, Jessica Johnson, Dan Rubalcaba, for joining in the later areas. I think due to the crowd's reaction, they definitely want to hear more war stories from us. So we might do these again in the future. And maybe next time Dan can show up a little bit earlier. If
We
he
can talk
wants to.
about the time I had to convince Frank that I actually did have a date.
That was so good. Oh, but that'll be a story for
Yep,
another time
next
because
time.
we're out of time.
Did Frank not
Sorry.
want to believe that?
He didn't
He
believe
did not.
that I
He
had
did not. He thought he was making an excuse, and it was a very long debate.
I have a
So-
date, Frank, with a woman.
With a human female, I believe was the classification. Sorry. So next up is Deus Ex with Alexander Brandon. Chris, I believe we worked with him on Aliens back in the day.
Aliens Crucible.
That's right. So he will be talking about Deus Ex and his work on that with Jonathan Paris. And I think that's it. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and hopefully we'll do more of this later, much like after the Kickstarter stuff, and we'll see. But thanks for listening, and I think that's it. Daniel, if you can transition over to the next stream.